nearly 1,000 vehicles in GTA Online, and over the last year, I went looking for at least one fact for every single one, from cut content to developer mistakes to features most players have never even noticed. The 10F's left headlight illuminates straight up when you turn on the high beams. If you break the left headlight, the right headlight will operate as normal, which tells us that it's only the left headlight with this issue. As for the 10F wide body on the Social Club, it's actually named the 10F Custom, which is odd considering they never call it the 10F Custom anywhere else. The 190Z, despite only having 2 doors, actually has 4 door options in the interaction menu when opening the doors. However, instead of the rear door selections actually opening a rear door, it opens a small panel between the doors and the front fender on either side of the vehicle. The 300R has been added and removed from the game multiple times, being added and removed, and then added again, and then removed again, and it has since been added a 3rd time and is still available. This is the most in and out that a vehicle's ever had in GTA Online. The 811 was originally supposed to have badging on the front and sides of the car, with the Pfister logo and 811 badges on the body itself. Now these are still present on the car's low detail model, but on the high detailed model they've been removed, giving it a cleaner look. The 8F Drafter had an issue when it first released where its license plate was actually attached to the base of the car and not the trunk. So when this car first came out, if you open the trunk, the plate would float in place. The 9F's badge was originally on its hood instead of on the grille. The 9F Cabrio's description says that it costs an extra $5,000 to the 9F Cabrio, which is close, but it actually costs $10,000 more. The Adder was originally supposed to have an active spoiler, and this could still be seen on an older version of the Legendary Motorsport banner photo after the Ill-Gotten Gains Part 1 DLC. Interestingly, the airport bus has marker lights on either side just below the roofline, but the original version of the bus did not include these. They were, however, added in the enhanced version of the game, but they were always seen on the airport bus regardless of when you played the game. Also in the enhanced version of the game, the airport bus has different horn variations of varying pitch, and it will be randomized depending on what the bus spawns with. The AirTug is one of the few non-emergency vehicles in the game to feature emergency lights and sirens. Well, kind of. When you turn on its flashing lights, it'll actually play a reverse beeping noise, normally seen on big trucks, that plays whether you're in forward or reverse. On top of that, the AirTug has no functional dials. The entire dash is just a 2D image that's been stretched to fit the space. The Akula's dual .5 cal miniguns originally prevented homing missiles from being able to lock onto the target. This was corrected with the Arena War update, but it would also cause the missile to kind of lag behind the helicopter, similar to how it does in the thruster. The Akuma has a few different exhaust options, but if you change the exhaust, it will actually remove the tail light, meaning that you won't have a brake light or any other lighting on the back end of your bike. Now this might be a minor oversight, but it is an interesting detail. The Aleutian is one of the only SUVs in the game with snorkel options. However, the option to add or customize your snorkel does not appear when customizing the car in the Executive Office Vehicle Workshop, although this option will appear in Los Santos Customs or any other personally owned custom shop. The Alpha originally displayed as a benefactor vehicle when entering any of Los Santos Customs or other mod shops around the map, and when wanted by the police scanner. This has since been fixed and correctly says Albany now. The Alpha Z1 has the smallest footprint of any plane in the game, but it also has a livery called Play Outside, which is based on the Slingsby T67 Firefly owned by Auntie Mabel in the British children's TV series called Come Outside. The ambulance's siren in the enhanced versions of the game will play a regular police siren when far away, switching to its unique tone only when it gets closer to the player. This is mostly noticeable in online. The Annihilator's camera has a missing lens, and it only shows a completely black sphere. However, when you look at this helicopter from far away, the same lens will appear. This is because it's visible on its low detail model, but not its high detail model. The Annihilator Stealth has a warning label in front of the rear doors that reads, "Emergency Allowable Limit." Allowable obviously being a typo, as it should say allowable. The anti-aircraft trailer has a really weird issue when you look behind you while using the turret. If you're on this trailer while someone is towing you and you decide to use the thumbstick or look behind button to look behind you and then turn the turret, sometimes your character model will not turn with the turret itself and will stay completely stationary. This leads to some pretty interesting angles and situations, but it doesn't affect the gameplay at all. The APC's cannon turret has a slightly different firing sound when operated by a player, which sounds slightly less knocking than the Rhino tank or Khanjali. But if another player is listening, either in the vehicle or near the vehicle, all the cannons will share the same firing sound. On top of that, this is the most expensive vehicle in the game if you include all prerequisite costs, including bunker research. I've covered all this in a video I did over a year ago, but if you want to get all that and pay for every single step along the way, it'll cost you almost $20 million. Aside from the Arbiter GT's horrible handling, its racing stripe liveries don't line up on the front splitter or one of the rear spoilers, making it slightly larger on the front splitters and slightly smaller on the spoiler, meaning that neither one of them line up with the rest of the livery on the car. The Ardent features the regular logo for its manufacturer, but an alternative version of this logo was located on the vehicle's Prize Ride Challenge advert, where it bears a resemblance to the badge that's used on the Esprit S1, S2, and S3 models. The armored box veil is one of the only vehicles with a turret on top that has no collision, meaning that if this box veil is parked right up against an edge or the gun is left hanging off the side, it won't collide with any structures and will instead clip through them. The ASBO's window tint will also slightly tint the headlight housing regardless of what color you've made the housing itself. This is only a slight tint and doesn't fully darken the headlights even if you have the limo window tint on. However, it would darken the tail lights, which go completely black with the darkest tint. Did you know that the Acia originally featured a declass badge on its steering wheel? This logo can still be seen in the original version of the game. The snowy Acia has a problem with its grille, where if you crash the front end of it too many times, the grille will appear to float mid-air. This is not present in the Rockstar editor, but can be seen in-game. The Astrope is both based on the Camry and the Toyota Orion, and the car's name in the beta version of GTA 5 was source-coded to be the Orion, which is the closest we've had to a real-life name making it into the game. When the Astrope GZ first released, the race front bumper modification didn't physically appear on the car, and would instead show the street front bumper option. The actual race front bumper model could be seen in reflections in certain mod shops, such as the Auto Shop or Office Mod Shop. This was fixed during the Bottom Dollar Bounties DLC. The Astrale's headlights don't deform at the same rate as the rest of the front end of the vehicle. So if you severely damage the front end of this vehicle, the headlights will sometimes appear to float because they don't move as much. This is most apparent when you turn the headlights on. The Astron's red reflector on the middle of its arc bumper options isn't centered and it's actually slightly off to the left. This is most noticeable when you compare it to the diffuser, the livery, or the badging on the back of the car. The Astron Custom, despite being more expensive and the custom variant, is actually half a mile an hour slower than the Astron. Occasionally, the Atomic Blimp will be parked in a weird position if you land it on the parking lot of the Los Santos Country Club and play golf. Additionally, if you land this on the golf course, it will actually interfere with how you can play golf.
Fuck this club.
The Autark has two separate trim colors, both of which are controlled by the primary and secondary colors respectively. Normally, cars have a secondary and trim color within the vehicle, but very rarely do they have a primary and secondary color equivalent that takes place within the vehicle. The Everest, like many bikes, doesn't have a spoiler option, but if you change or add a belt drive cover, it will slightly increase the traction the same way that a spoiler would. The Avenger surprisingly has 4 different models: the regular Avenger, the Prop Avenger, the upgraded Avenger, and the upgraded Prop Avenger. So here's a couple facts that apply to all of them. To start, the Avenger is manufactured by Mammoth, but it was listed in Wars.Cash Cash and Carry as a heavy vehicle. This wasn't fixed until the Southern San Andreas Supersport series. The Avenger is also listed as a helicopter in the creator because the vehicle cannot land in flight mode due to the size of the rotors and how they'd hit the ground. If you try to land with the rotors forward, they will always automatically go to upright as soon as they touch the ground. When deploying and retracting the landing gear, the animation on the wheels will freeze for a very brief moment. And moving to the upgraded Avenger, the model on the upgraded version has a faster landing gear animation, so if you play them side by side, you'll notice that it is slightly faster. If the Avisa is requested while driving another vehicle with the radio on, the radio will automatically change to the music locker. On top of that, this vehicle's Rockstar Games social club listing incorrectly labels it as sellable and modifiable, but you can't modify or sell this vehicle in the Kosatka. If you look at the rear quarter panels of the Avisa, you'll notice that it says it has a maximum depth of 2,000 meters. But in reality, it has the same depth as any other submarine in the game and doesn't go nearly that deep. When the B-11 Strike Force first came out, it used the standard aircraft icon, despite the fact that it had its own unique icon in the game files. This was later fixed, so the aircraft will now correctly be displayed on the map. However, when requesting it through the interaction menu, the on-screen message will still display the standard aircraft icon. The Bagger, also known as Franklin's bike, can be seen in a few places around the map. Firstly, in Beaker's garage in Paleto Bay, if you go in on foot, there's a small manual for the Bagger which showcases a Princip logo instead of the Western logo that it should have. On top of that, in the job room of the clubhouse, the player can see a beta version of the Bagger in the picture. If you look closely, you'll notice that it has a sissy bar modification, which is unavailable on the final version of the bike. The first generation Baller has ads shown around the map with unavailable mods, including a bumper splitter and additional side skirts, which are not modifications that are available in the final version of the game. With the second generation of the Baller in the earliest versions of the game, Southern San Andreas Super Autos actually had a picture of the first generation model, but this was very quickly fixed. When it comes to the Baller LE Armored, Baller LE LWB, and the Baller LE LWB Armored, they're all virtually carbon copies of each other. However, the Baller LE is the only Baller to spawn inside the Diamond Casino Resort's public garage. The Baller LE Armored is used in various heists, including the Doomsday Heist, Union Depository Contract, and the Gangbanger Robbery. The Baller LE LWB is the only Baller that's included in the Exotic Exports list, and the Baller LE LWB Armored is the only Baller that's requestable via the interaction menu, more specifically with the VIP menu. The Baller ST has daytime running lights in its front headlight compartments. However, they can only be clearly seen at nighttime or in dark spaces, but they only turn on once the headlight has been smashed or broken. There are occasional times where these lights will also appear stuck on, despite the fact you've gotten out of the vehicle. The Baller STD features a bug that regardless of what spoiler you have attached to the vehicle, if you manage to break the trunk of the car off, it will default back to the stock variant. Also, this vehicle has a lot of floating bits once it gets severely damaged. The Banshee was added to the game on day one way back in 2013, and Rockstar actually worked with a real-life company to make a real-life version of the Banshee that they used for a giveaway. This vehicle can also briefly be seen in Better Call Saul. The Banshee 900R actually has two number stickers on the roof that come with the Bravado Racing Retro Stripes livery and the Bravado Racing Drift Camo liveries. These number stickers aren't perfectly aligned with the center of the car and deviate slightly to the passenger side. The Banshee GTS can be seen in some artwork for the Agents of Sabotage DLC that shows a white version of the GTS Stripes livery without the GTS lettering, which cannot be obtained in-game. The Barracks was originally supposed to have a fully covered canvas bed. This could be seen in an advertisement for the Warstock Cash and Carry website in-game prior to the Ill-Gotten Gains Part 1 DLC. It's believed that this was changed to allow players to sit in the back without being undercover or just glitching with the canvas itself. On top of that, Rockstar also released a second version of the Barracks for the Heist DLC. This version is almost identical when you first look at it, but if you look at the canvas, it's been cut even shorter on the Heist version, including removing the flap at the back that moves in the wind. The Barracks Semi is another version of this truck that's been converted to a semi-truck style tractor trailer. The main issue with this model is that the warning stickers on the front bumper actually light up upon starting the truck, and they act as daytime running lights. Obviously, this doesn't play a factor on any of the other Barracks versions, and shouldn't play a factor on this one either, but it's never been fixed, and they still light up as if they were headlights, and you can't break them either. An added fact to this is that another Barracks Semi can be found in the ocean just east of the Humane Labs and Research Building. However, if you look closely, this model of the barrack semi has been severely increased in size, since it's just massive compared to the regular barracks, and is probably closer in size to the dump. The barrage is one of the most common vehicles used by Clifford and Avon in the Doomsday Heist. But what many people don't know is that you can actually put the Clifford logos on the vehicle if you follow this specific set of instructions. You'll need to purchase the barracks and bring it to your Arena workshop. But in order to customize this weaponized vehicle in the Arena War workshop, you'll have to have the weaponized mechanic. And in order to have the option to add the logos, you'll have to have the Benny's customization option within the Arena workshop. Once both of these are purchased, you can bring the barrage into your Arena workshop, but you can find the option under Vanity Plates in a group named Custom Mod 1, and it costs roughly $11,000. The front logo on the hood will also remain there even with a camouflage net or shutter hood. Another added bonus fact for this vehicle is that if you add the rear turret, it will actually give you the bonuses of a spoiler option in the game. So despite this vehicle not having any spoilers, adding that rear turret will give you extra traction. The Batty 801 in previous games was referred to as the Batty 800, and they just changed the name to 801 in GTA 5. But despite this name change, the police radio will still sometimes refer to the bike as the Batty 800 instead of the 801. As for the Batty 801RR, it actually has a different sound when using it in the jewel store job in story mode. The engine sound during this heist has been taken from the Akuma. The Beater Duke's intake doesn't shake with the rest of the engine. Now this isn't super noticeable, but many other vehicles, when the engine shakes or moves, will move its intake as well. But for the Beater Dukes, this doesn't apply for both the shaker hood, single intake catcher, triple intake bug catcher, or the twin turbo hood. The BJ-XL was originally meant to tow trailers in the game, as the vehicle's meta file indicates that it was at one point supposed to be able to tow smaller trailers, but it was never given a tow hitch and this feature was removed. The Benson originally had a bug where when you pulled a dead body from the Benson, instead of pulling the body out first, your character would actually go and sit in that person's lap and then knock them out of the vehicle. This has since been fixed, but you might also not know that the Benson is seen with the original GTA 4 push bar, chrome bumper, and 3D grille during the jewel store job in Franklin's trailer back in 2013. The Cluck and Bell Benson is actually a slightly different model than the regular Benson, but most importantly, its livery is actually uneven. If you follow the left side around to the back, you'll notice that the lines do align together, but on the right side, it's actually significantly higher than everywhere else. I'm not sure how this error came to be, and it's never been fixed. The Besra is a jet without any weaponry. Despite this, the jet aiming HUD is still present on the control panel inside the cockpit. This is most likely a developer's oversight as a result of the Besra's control panel being reused from the laser. But it could also indicate that the Besra is a lead-in fighter trainer jet, which would make some sense, I suppose. The Bestia GTS initially had some incorrect textures on the bottom of its hood, where it would be seen using the same texture as the vehicle's suspension and underside. The BF400 comes with either the Atomic or Sprunk livery applied when you purchase it, although these can be removed at LS Customs now, but originally they weren't able to be. The Biff's rear waste container appears to be a separate extra attached to the vehicle model, in the same manner that it was in GTA 4's appearance, meaning that the truck bed would and should be properly textured if the container were removed. Despite this, the truck only ever appears with the box, and the box cannot be removed. The Bifta's unique social club silhouette features a surfboard on its roof, despite the fact that it's not one of the 12 vehicles that have surfboard modifications available. The Bison is featured in a TV advertisement within the game, and they claim that it pulls 6,000 horsepower, which is horsepower that's only normally pulled by industrial-sized vehicles such as dump trucks.
With 6,000 horsepower and fuel efficiency that's great for the environment,
making it a completely outlandish claim. The Mighty Bush Bison is a unique variant of the Bison that's actually a separate model, and if you manage to get this vehicle in online, it can be stored as a personal vehicle, despite the fact that it used to be blacklisted. Rockstar made it available again in the Safe House in the Hills DLC. The McGill-Olsen Bison is typically referred to as the Bison that we use in the mission where we tear down Madrazo's mansion. However, even that model is slightly different from the stock variant of the McGill-Olsen Bison, because in the mission it has a winch system in the box, but normally it just has some random tools, so I'm not sure why this had to be a separate model. The blade's chrome tip exhausts are slightly offset to the driver's side, meaning that they clip with the back bumper. On top of that, the steering wheel bears a D-Class badge, which is odd since it's manufactured by Vapid. The Blazer is one of the few vehicles in the game that has its rear license plate textured the same on both sides, giving it a mirrored look from the inside. The Blazer Aqua has a small issue with its wheels disappearing when viewed from far away. The farther back you go, eventually you'll see that the stock wheels will disappear entirely. As for the Blazer Lifeguard, the lights are actually blocked by a flotation device on the hood, but it can still clearly illuminate the road, shining directly through it. When driving the Ballista in first-person view, if you look down towards the right front wheel and turn sharply, you'll notice that the wheel will actually clip slightly through the inside of the vehicle. This is most visible with off-road wheels when turning in a circle over bumps. The Ballista is also featured in various Jiffy Rent adverts around the map, though the Dinka logo cannot be seen on the grille of the car, implying that it was likely a beta model. However, this could have been intentional because rental car places sometimes debadge their cars to avoid free advertisement for the manufacturer. The Ballista Compact's dual exit exhaust only has one working exhaust pipe, with the other one being completely defunct. The Ballista Canjo has a unique window net modification, which isn't available for many vehicles. However, when applying this modification, it will prevent you from using or selecting any weapons inside the car, including your fists. The BMX surprisingly has multiple issues when you bring it to the edge of the world map. Obviously, this isn't possible in regular gameplay, but if you do manage to get it out there on top of the water, it used to behave as if it had a failed engine, where the player model would try and kickstart it like a motorcycle. Now it just glitches repeatedly, but you can still jump around and get moving, so... The Bobcat XL is oddly placed under the Luxury tab on Southern San Andreas Super Autos, despite the fact that nothing about this truck says Luxury anywhere. The Bodhi was originally supposed to be able to tow trailers, as it has a trailer hitch, and for the longest time did accept any trailer, changing the camera angle like a normal truck that can connect to the trailer would do. But in this case, the trailers will never connect to the Bodhi, as it was cut content from the game. The Boar has two small issues that I noticed. First, with its open roof option, the glass was not actually moved in the model. This can be seen if you shoot through the T-top, causing the glass to crack where it used to be rather than where it is currently. On top of that, the bed cap available on the back of this vehicle only has collision going into the box and not out of the box, so if you shoot through the box, you can actually shoot through the canopy. The Go Postal box veil is found in many other Rockstar games, including Manhunt. You can also spot a white version of this box veil in Bully. The Humane Labs box veil only spawns during missions and can't be found parked or spawning anywhere during normal gameplay. This includes story mode and online. The LSDS box veil is different than the LSDWP box veil, and on the Rockstar Social Club it states that it can seat 2 people instead of 6. When the box veil LSDWP was released in the Heist update, they actually removed the LSDS livery from the standard box veil. But this is only on newer versions of the game, so if you play on Xbox 360 or PlayStation 3, you might still see that livery. The Post-Ops box veil is not as slow as it's believed to be. Now, it does feel very slow going up the hills during missions, but it's actually faster than the Chernobog, Surfer Custom, APC, Vatir, and even the Dock Tug. So it's still slow, but not as slow as you thought. The BR8's engine model uses the Dinka Racing Division badges found on many of the Dinka Racing vehicles. But the original word Dinka has been replaced with Benefactor because that's what this vehicle is made by, but it does look a little off-putting. On top of that, when using the cinematic camera feature, you can actually switch to a cabin view that's intended to emulate the onboard camera. This was present on Formula 1 vehicles since 1985, but this one is located just slightly behind the player's head. The Brawler has an issue with its lower textures. The intersection of the front right wheel well is missing, leaving a cutout portion that exposes most of the engine and lets you see through the vehicle. This isn't present on the left side. The Brigade was originally branded as an HVOI vehicle in-game, despite an update announcement and in-game website referring to it as the MTL Brigade. Following the Cunning Stunts update, the vehicle's in-game brand was changed to MTL and corrected. However, on the Rockstar Social Club, it still refers to the vehicle as an HVOI vehicle. On top of that, this vehicle actually has a front license plate, though it can't be seen due to the permanent bull bar extra on the front of the vehicle. But if you use a camera in the Rockstar editor to clip into it, you will see that the plate does exist. As for the Brigade 6x6, players who have completed all of the 6 First Dose missions will see a trade price of $750,000, but will be unable to complete a purchase since they've already stolen and kept the vehicle in the missions. Meaning that despite this vehicle having a trade price, you'll never actually be able to pay said trade price, making the trade price completely irrelevant. The Brigham's left side mirror of the primary stock mirrors option is slightly higher up than any other mirror. This is such a slight change that you can only notice it really when switching back and forth rapidly between the stock option and the primary stock option. The Brioso 300 has a customization option called full top down, where the entire roof and rear window are removed. However, if you shoot or rear end this vehicle, the glass for the rear window will still shatter in place, showing that despite the fact it's been removed and is invisible, it still exists on the vehicle. As for the Brioso 300 widebody, it's one of the first vehicles in the franchise to have multiple layouts available for the engine. As stock, the engine is located in the rear of the vehicle like the regular Brioso 300, but you can customize this to put the engine in the front, which will leave the back for the intercooler. However, if you severely damage this vehicle, you'll notice that the smoke and fire will emit from the rear end of the vehicle regardless on where you put the engine. Now, if you damage the Brioso RA in a similar fashion, you'll notice that even if the trunk is open, it cannot break off. Every other panel for this vehicle will eventually break off, but no matter how hard I tried, I could not get the trunk to detach from the vehicle. The Broadway has a downtown Cabco livery that allows you to use the vehicle for taxi work, but the taxi light on top, mounted to the roof, works in conjunction with the headlights, so when the headlights are on, the taxi light is on. But it's tied directly to the left headlight, because if you break the right headlight, it'll still function, but if the left headlight is broken, the taxi light will turn off. The Apocalypse Bruiser has the skeleton and cage spoiler option, and if you look closely, it's the same skeletal model that was used for the giant skeleton in Red Dead Redemption 2.
Oh, a little Red Dead Redemption, huh?
For the Future Shock Bruiser, the Arena War website shows it with a ram skull totem decoration, which isn't available on the Future Shock variant. On top of this, the ram decoration has extra spikes on it. As for the Nightmare Bruiser, when customizing it, you'll notice that the Cabal livery is labeled the Carbo livery, which is a typo that was in the game and has never been fixed. The Apocalypse Brutus was named after Marcus Junius Brutus, one of the Roman politicians who assassinated Julius Caesar, the emperor of the Roman Empire. Technically, this applies to all three variants of the Brutus, but for the Future Shock, I'm going to mention that the headlight, taillights, and windshield all get tinted, when it's only the windshield and side windows on every other variant. Finally, the Nightmare Brutus actually has an error with its armor plating over the front quarter panel windows, which when shot will actually show the broken glass texture on the metallic armor, which doesn't make any sense. The Buccaneer was my first vehicle in GTA 5, and its base model design is used for all muscle cars on the Rockstar Social Club when you're editing or changing the vehicle. The Buccaneer Custom has a slight mapping error on its front bumper. This causes some other texturing to bleed through, right where the bumper connects. The Buffalo has some glitches in Los Santos Customs where you can remove the bumpers and skirts from the regular Buffalo, but this was patched not too long ago. The Buffalo Police Cruiser will sometimes be misidentified by the in-game police scanner, where they'll call it a Vapid Police Cruiser, despite the fact that the Buffalo is clearly made by Bravado. The Buffalo EVX is a quick electric car in GTA 5 that has a fake engine startup revving noise, but this will only be audible to the driver. If another player gets into this vehicle and starts it, anyone standing near the vehicle won't hear it except for the person driving the car. On top of that, any passenger within the vehicle will also be unable to hear the engine noise. The Buffalo S has a more well-known fact, but if you look inside the vehicle, you'll notice that the floor mats actually have Vapid logos instead of Bravado logos. The new Buffalo S Cruiser in Online has a couple different issues, including extra lights with some grille options that are completely bugged, glitched, and just don't line up with anything, as well as grille options that sometimes cause the lights themselves to float. The Sunstrip also has primary outside colors and secondary inside colors, so maybe they meant to have two options for this? The spotlights also have very weird hitboxes and will actually break if you shoot the windshield instead of the light itself. The Buffalo STX occasionally has an error where if you install one of the two louver options on the back window and switch to a new session, these can sometimes end up being removed. On top of that, the rear plate light is offset to the passenger side instead of being centered with the actual plate. As for the new Buffalo STX Pursuit, some liveries with the raised hood option will actually be clipped and look completely buggy. This vehicle is also one of only a few vehicles in the game to have a rear wiper, But if you replace it with the louvers, they'll weirdly clip through the window, causing a weird visual bug at the base of the window. The Bullet was hard to find unique facts for, but many people aren't aware that it is the slowest supercar by lap time in the entire game, being even slower than the Astrop GZ, Zion, and the Strider. The Buckacherz Stallion has one other difference from the regular Stallion other than its paint job, and that's the fact that it backfires from the exhaust, which it doesn't do on its stock variant. The burrito's name in the international Chinese release translates to Dickmaster. The bail enforcement burrito is one of the few vehicles in online that, unlike property-specific vehicles, lacks the option to lock the van from other players. So even if you have all of your permissions turned off so nobody can enter your vehicle, they will always be able to enter or drive your bail enforcement burrito. The Bugstar Burrito's image on Social Club for GTA 5 and GTA Online are the same, and both feature Franklin as the driver, which doesn't make any sense for GTA Online. The McGill-Olsen Burrito has some Rockstar Social Club issues as well, primarily featuring the Bugstar's Burrito picture as its main image, which is incorrect. Lastly, the Snowy Burrito is the only burrito to spawn with a chrome grille, and this can't be changed on any of the vehicles, despite the fact that many of them have different grills from each other. The bus has been in the game since 2013, and in the original version of the game, it was possible to use the sawed-off shotgun for drive-bys while driving a bus. This was fixed in the enhanced version, but was an interesting and unique feature. Also in the enhanced version of the game, the dash warning lights still function, but the dashboard texture is mapped incorrectly, resulting in some lights being cut off at the top edge. The Buzzard that doesn't feature any weapons surprisingly lacks the red and green navigation lights on either side. This is likely a minor developer oversight, as the ARM variant does have these lights on its stub wings. Speaking of the Buzzard attack helicopter, the spotlight used to move depending on where the player was looking. It was most noticeable when switching to the cinematic camera, where the same device could be seen keeping its direction. This is absent in the Enhanced and the Expanded Enhanced editions, but can still be seen on the original Xbox 360 and PlayStation 3 versions. Now I know we've only scratched the surface with the A and B vehicles, but we are 13% of the way done, and I want to remind everyone that we have a very strong list of goals. At 100,000 subs, I'll be ranking every vending machine, and if we hit the big 1 mil before GTA 6, I will be ranking all 34,062 trees in the entire game. But I'm okay if we don't hit that goal in time. The Bunker Caddy is a very unique vehicle that you normally don't see driving around in online, and that's because many people aren't aware that you can actually call Agent 14 to request this vehicle in online. On top of that, due to reused assets from the civilian variant, the Bunker Caddy retains the plate light even though there's no actual license plate on the vehicle. Speaking of the civilian Caddy, the light coronas are off-center. If you look really closely at the headlights of this vehicle after turning on the lights, you'll notice that the source of the light is actually located farther in towards the center of the vehicle than the headlights themselves. This is only by a small margin and can be hard to notice, but if you look closely, you'll see it. And finally, the Golf Caddy is our last caddy of the video, and for the passenger it has no footrest. So despite the fact that a passenger's foot will be resting where a footrest should be, their feet will actually float in place, which would take a lot of core and leg strength if you wanted to hold that in real life. The Calico GTF was changed before its release. As in the original teaser screenshot for the vehicle, the rear badges were reused from the Astrop, claiming to have a 3.5 V6 four-wheel drive drivetrain, but these badges were changed with its final release. The camper has the same structural body as the burrito, but it's labeled as Brute and not D-Class, so I'm not entirely sure who manufactured this, but it might have just been a conversion done by Brute. The Caracara has an issue with its minigun, where if the player looks behind them when getting onto the minigun, it'll cause a very glitchy animation where the arms and head of the character will twist and bend in a very bizarre way. The Caracara 4x4 lacks a Los Santos Customs enter animation and will completely void the cutscene when you try and customize this truck.
What can the best mechanic in LS do for you?
The Caracara Pursuit's roof light bar is attached very weakly. With even a light touch to any exterior body, this light will come flying off. This was fixed on some other vehicles when they first released, but has yet to be fixed on the Caracara. The Carbon RS was originally only available to people who owned the collector's edition of Grand Theft Auto 5. But on top of that, the entire bike is carbon, but the wheels could actually be colored when purchased. But it didn't take full effect, leaving the wheels unchanged. This was later patched, so it's no longer able to be changed. The Carbon Desire didn't originally have any windshield wipers, as in the beta on its first screenshots, there was no wipers on the car. The cargo plane is the largest plane in the entire game, and during the mission Minor Turbulence, Ron claims that it has 4 jets. However, the plane has 4 pods containing 2 jets each, giving it 8 jets in total. So, I'm not sure what Ron was talking about.
You know, the cargo plane's got 4 jets, a 200-foot wingspan. Flying that high is gonna draw attention.
Another version of the cargo plane was released with the Drug Wars DLC, that had working dials and new details. The plane is largely identical to the standard cargo plane, but it has Russian markings and aircraft registration numbers found on the fuselage and tail fin that were removed. The aircraft also has functional gauges inside the cockpit, unlike its standard counterpart. The Cargo Bob's hook can't be activated while in passive mode. Therefore, if you want to use the hook while in passive mode, you'll have to lower the hook prior to entering passive mode, since if you enter passive mode with the hook already deployed, it will function as normal. A separate variant of the Cargo Bob was added for the Drop Zone game mode, with the side doors having been removed, although the steps to get into the side doors weren't removed, meaning that there's a step on either side of the vehicle that's there for no apparent reason. The Jet Sam Cargo Bob is noticeably quieter than the regular Cargo Bob, and although it does have different designs and it's a little more expensive, it's a bit more pleasant on your ears to fly. Finally, the Trevor Phillips Enterprises Cargo Bob is actually slightly different from the regular Cargo Bob as well. It's not just the livery. If you look closely, the fuel tanks have been moved slightly back to allow it to easily maneuver with the submersible attached. The helicopter also occasionally spawns with an extended hook attachment, but the biggest difference is definitely the fuel tanks. The Casco's rear right indicator is unbreakable, and it will always stay on regardless of if the other lights are turned off. This can easily be seen at night, but is slightly noticeable during the day. The Cascader is a Career Progress Award for the Bottom Dollar Bounties section. However, due to some error with this vehicle, if you win this and go to repaint or put new liveries on it, the white bumper on the front of the vehicle will continue to be white regardless of what you paint the car. This is not the case with the regular version of the car. Shout out to MyHigh for letting me purchase their Cascader because I am not doing all that work to get this car. The first generation of the Cavalcade actually has tinted lights. When you go to tint the windows, both the indicators and the blue lights in the headlight compartment will become tinted. As for the second generation of the Cavalcade, the driving column is actually slightly shifted from the steering wheel and base of the dash. The Cavalcade XL has removed badging, as the texture file for this vehicle's badging contained a V-shaped logo derived from the VSTR, which isn't visible anywhere in the final model of this vehicle. However, it can be seen on Southern San Andreas Super Autos or on the Rockstar Games Social Club. The Apocalypse Cerberus has a really weird error when applying window tint. Now, normally when we talk about window tint, I mention a blinker or a headlight or a windshield that gets tinted. But in this case, the tint also applies to the antennae on the mirrors. If you look closely, they appear with a thicker line once the heaviest tint is applied. The same applies to its Nightmare variant, and I'm not sure how this came to be. For the Future Shock Cerberus, when customizing the truck's secondary color, the camera will look at the top rear of the tanker, despite the model itself actually lacking the rear frame in comparison to the Apocalypse and Nightmare variants. Another fact for the Nightmare Cerberus that does apply to the others is that the RAM actually affects passive mode. Despite having a flamethrower by default, the player can still switch to passive mode if the truck is not equipped with a ram weapon. But the problem here is that the flamethrower doesn't count as the weapon, it's actually the ram weapon on the front of the vehicle that will disable passive mode. When customizing the Champion, if you put the white stripes livery on with any Sunstrip modification, the Sunstrip will have the word Declasse written on it, which is abnormal considering this car was made by Dubachi. Now this could be due to a sponsorship with the Class A, but chances are Rockstar just made a mistake with the manufacture of this vehicle. The Dinka Chavos V6 was originally labeled as Karen on the Southern San Andreas Super Autos website. This has since been fixed, but it was an interesting error when it first came out. The Chebrek is one of the only cars to feature a dash cam built into the vehicle, and this is a reference to the amount of dash cams and the importance of them in Russia. However, on top of that, if you apply the Hardbase, Prolapse, or Rusty Prolapse liveries, it adds a subwoofer within the trunk. The Cheetah was originally supposed to have a glass sunroof. This was seen in the earliest footage of the game, but can still be seen on the vehicle hauler trailer that has a cheetah at the bottom level. The Cheetah Classic has engine cover options that feature a glass panel that you can look through into the engine. These glass panels, however, have no collision and no damage, as the bullets phase right through and damage the engine itself rather than smashing or damaging the glass. The Chernobog actually has a unique reverse beeping sound compared to other vehicles in the game. It's not extremely noticeable, but if you listen closely, it is different. The Chimera is our first three-wheel tricycle in the motorcycles class, and when it first came out, the front wheel and front disc brake were not centered correctly, causing them to look odd in shape out of center. And it also had an issue with its exhaust pipes, where it would have a backfire sound, but flames wouldn't emit. These were both fixed in the import-export update. If you look closely at the Chino with certain aftermarket wheels, you'll notice that the front brake calipers will actually clip through the rims. As for the Chino Custom, if you apply the quad exhaust options, the exhaust will be slightly offset to one side, making it appear that only one exhaust pipe is actually functioning. The Cinque Mila's faded purple livery appears to be based off of the Maserati Gran Turismo Zeta, which is where this car may have gotten most of its inspiration. The Cliffhanger is originally based on the Harley-Davidson XR750, which was the favored bike of the stuntman and daredevil Evel Knievel, so it makes sense that there's a Jock Cranley livery for this bike. The Clique is one of only a few vehicles with hood and trunk straps, rather than pins to keep the hood and trunk closed. The Clique wagon, however, has a deflector hood ornament available that isn't visible through the windshield or any other glass. This is visible from any other angle, even from behind, but if you're within the vehicle looking from first person, this will appear invisible. The Clown Van is one of a few vehicles from the release of the game that features a tow hook on the rear of the vehicle, but doesn't have the ability to tow any vehicles whatsoever, similar to the Bodhi, but in this case it doesn't actually accept the trailer and the camera doesn't change when you back up to one. The Club has some of the most sticker bombing options of any vehicle in the game. However, the sticker bomb options on the doors and the trunk will disappear completely when you detach those body panels. The Cognoscenti was originally supposed to have an Arena War variant, as the game files from that update suggested a third variant of the Cognoscenti to be released, which was likely an arena-ready or arena contender vehicle that was cut from the update. The Cognoscenti 55 has a small dent on the center of its front bumper. This isn't seen on any of the other Cognoscentis, and it's odd that it's so apparent in certain lighting. The Cognoscenti 55 Armored has 3 different names throughout the game. In the base game, it's called the Cognoscenti 55 Armored. On the website and game, it's called the Cognoscenti 55, and in the creator, it's called the Cognoscenti 55 ARM for short. The Cognoscenti Armored came with 80% armor and bulletproof tires as standard when purchased, which is shared among some other luxury vehicles as well. The Cognoscenti Cabrio has had a glitch with its trunk since the day of its release. If you start to lower the roof and then interrupt the animation by opening the boot in the interaction menu, this will cause the trunk or boot to completely detach from the car in the animation process, merging with the back seat. This has yet to be patched, and if you manage to knock the trunk off, it also looks funky and won't function as a convertible anymore. The Comet's trunk and hood options are swapped in the interaction menu in GTA Online, where it labels the front boot as the hood and the rear engine compartment as the trunk, likely a minor oversight from the early days of the game. The Comet Retro Custom features several liveries that are off-center, which can be seen on the hood. In addition, some liveries are unparalleled, where one side of the vehicle is higher up than the other. The Comet S2 can be seen during the Union Depository job, where the bank manager clearly owns a racing blue one with a custom plate, Bossman. On the Comet S2 Cabrio, when you honk the horn, your player's hand will actually travel directly through the steering wheel. The Comet Safari has a very common issue where, when applying window tint, the unusable fog lamps located on the stock bumper will also become tinted. The Comet SR is supposed to be rear-wheel drive, but when rolled over, a driveshaft connecting the rear engine to the front wheels is present without a center differential. The Kanata's description says that it weighs over 1.6 tons, but its actual weight is 1.55 tons, putting it just under what they say it's over. The Vapid Contender, which, first off, pisses me off because it's supposed to be Karen, also has an ugly removable front bumper, which many people have requested Rockstar make an option to remove. Now, although they've never made this an option, the picture that they used on the Social Club actually lacks the front-mounted fog lights. The Coquette has a very rare glitch in GTA 5's story mode that prevents any Coquettes from spawning whatsoever. To fix this problem, you just have to replay the mission Mr. Richards and take the parked Coquette there and then fail the mission. Originally, the Coquette Blackfin had a tintable windshield, and although the window tint option gets completely disabled when the roof is removed, you can see that with a tinted window, the upper side of the windshield used to get slight tint. But it's something to keep in mind that if you wanted to apply this tint, you would have had to apply the roof, apply the tint, and then remove the roof. The hood on the Coquette Classic lacks an animation when being opened via the interaction menu. Because of this glitch, when you use a clip in the Rockstar editor that includes this vehicle with its hood open or damaged, it will sometimes cause the game to crash entirely. The newer Coquette D1 features an error where players' heads will clip through the roll cage bar when the roof is removed. This is more noticeable on the driver's side as the shoulder and back of the head both clip with the roll cage. On the Coquette D10, when removing the roof in Los Santos Customs, a floating triangular vehicle texture will be visible just above the center armrest. The Coquette D10 Pursuit is technically able to remove the roof, but this would also remove the in-game light bars. That is, of course, unless you use a specific glitch that will allow you to attach a light to the invisible roof, meaning that the lights will float above the car. The Coquette D5's fog lights will hover in place if the vehicle's front bumper is loose or removed. Any aftermarket grille option will also hover in place if the vehicle's front bumper is removed. Oh, and this vehicle is still completely bulletproof, for some reason. Coursita is Corsician for lane, emulating the term course from the MC20's full name, the Maserati Corse 2020. This is further implied with the Lampadati racing livery featuring the abbreviation LC22 on its roof, likely standing for Lampadati Corsita 2022. The Cruiser is the slowest bicycle in the entire game, and up until the Inductor was released, also the heaviest, reaching a top speed of just 20 km an hour. Because of these details, it's unable to execute bunny hops or even wheelies, but you can still do a stoppie. The Crusader was originally supposed to be the only vehicle seen in the cargo plane in the mission Minor Turbulence, as shown in the second trailer for the game. But if you've played story mode, you'd know that this mission has replaced that vehicle with the off-road Mesa. The Cuban 800 has counter-rotating propellers, as they turn in opposite directions. This is typically quite unusual for general aviation twin-engine aircraft, since both propellers usually turn to the right. So maybe it's an oversight, or maybe I just don't know enough about planes. An added fact is that the description on Alita's Travel says that the plane is worth $32,000, which contradicts its actual price, which is $240,000. This was fixed in GTA Online. The custom flatbed is listed as a possible and valid personal vehicle, even though it's not obtainable through normal means. On top of that, it can only be customized within the facility workshop, with only basic customization options available. Regarding the design of this vehicle, the vehicle assumes the design of the regular flatbed, with a different bed that resembles a cleaner version of the one found on the Wastelander, so it's kind of a combination of those two vehicles. And for some reason, the vehicle isn't listed on the Rockstar Games Social Club. The Cutter lacks a radio, any type of first-person view, or a cinematic camera. So whenever you try and change the radio or change your camera in this vehicle, you'll be very limited for your options. But despite not having a first-person view in the enhanced version of the game, the vehicle still features working dials and a working speedometer. A slightly smaller version of the Cutter can be seen on the back of the flatbed trailer. This model is slightly different and slightly shorter compared to its regular counterpart. The Cutter is also referred to as a tunnel boring machine, although more realistic tunnel boring machines do exist in the game, as seen under the Union Depository. The Cyclone was originally put in the wrong class on the Rockstar Games Social Club. While in-game, the vehicle would be in the Supers class, which is where it belongs, but on the Rockstar Social Club, it was labeled in the Sports class until that was fixed shortly after. As for the Cyclone 2, the third level of the driving camera that's farthest away from the vehicle is slightly farther away than it is on any other vehicle. I'm not entirely sure why this is the case, but it isn't the only vehicle to have this feature. The Cypher's rear license plate light is actually connected to the chassis of the vehicle and not the trunk itself, so when you open the trunk you'll still see this light shining on the base of the trunk. The regular Damon has a similar feature we mentioned before, where if you install any belt drive cover, it will also increase the traction the same way the spoiler would. But if you want a full list of all the bikes and vehicles with odd spoilers like this, I've made a video on that as well. The Damon has two different variants that are very similar to each other. The Lost MC Damon was originally seen in The Lost and the Damned, where it featured an electric starter motor, but in GTA 5, it has a Kickstarter motor instead. The Dachshund's name has many different puns or references in it. Starting off, Das Hund is faux German for the dog, and people have referred to riding a greyhound as riding the dog. On top of that, Dachshund is also the common mispronunciation of Dachshund, the type of dog that they use in their branding. The Death Bike has three different versions, with the Apocalypse, Nightmare, and Future Shock variants, but all of these models feature a speed glitch, where if you put a larger rim on the rear wheel, it can actually glitch into the ground when performing a wheelie, giving it a constant tremendous speed boost. As for the Future Shock Death Bike, you can actually turn off the glowing lights on the bike before driving it. Similar to the Shotaro, it's possible to drive the Future Shock Death Bike with all the lights off by turning the engine on via the interaction menu before driving it. As for the Nightmare version, the brakes have a weird tint. If you look closely, the transmission chain and rear sprocket have a bluish shade on the right hand side, but the left hand side is the regular metallic grey appearance. The Defiler can be seen on the Rockstar Social Club, where images have features that are not available to us in the game, including the removal of the secondary frame-colored pinstriping on the body, including the fairing modification, and a Shih Tzu badge on its fuel tank, which is only visible on the pre-2019 image. It also features a Shih Tzu logo on the clutch cover. The Deity has indestructible front indicators. The lower indicators on the front sides of the car are indestructible and can't be damaged via crashes or gunshots, and this is likely due to the fact that they weren't programmed as lamps, as the machine gun props are placed over them when added. The Deluxo used to have one of the fastest speed glitches in the entire game. The player was able to travel much faster than anything else in the game, including any aircraft. This was made possible by flying really high in the air, disabling the flight mode, and spinning the car onto its roof, and then back over to its wheels as seen on the screen. For some reason, this would cause the vehicle to fly in reverse at a very high speed. The color of the Desert Raid's spare tires are actually linked to the regular tire colors rather than a trim color, secondary color, or primary color. So despite the fact you can't color the stock wheels in Los Santos Customs, you can modify the spare stock wheels, but you can't change their style. The Devastate 8 is one of only a few vehicles that write out the number in the name. But within the first few years of GTA Plus being released, this car was available for GTA Plus members, and on the GTA Plus website it was written as Devastate 8 with the number, which was a mistake on Rockstar's end. The Deviant has a livery that gets cut off severely when applying it with its stock roof. Its stock roof is set as black and doesn't apply any of the livery designs, cutting off the number 51 from this livery. The DH7 Iron Mule actually has the ability to open the cargo bay of the helicopter, and you can drive vehicles into it, unless you've installed flares, chaffs, smoke, or any level of armor. And depending on which mods you put on, this might be irreversible. The Diabolus was originally featured in The Lost and the Damned as well, where Terry drives a blue one and Clay drives a purple one. Due to the fact that this vehicle was not included in the original Grand Theft Auto 5 story mode, Terry and Clay instead drive Hexer bikes painted in their respective Diabolus colors during the mission Mr. Phillips. As for the Diabolus Custom, the bike assigns similar parts to regular vehicles with some unintended effects that may occur when customizing the vehicle. If you select any of the fuel tank options, you'll get a hydraulic sound similar to lowriders, and selecting any engine block or air filter categories produces a sound similar to a vehicle's hood opening, despite the fact that these sounds shouldn't be in place for bikes. The Dilettante has a small, almost unnoticeable dent on its front bumper. If you look closely, you can see the light reflect over this slight imperfection. As for the Dilettante Patrol, the dent is still there, but this vehicle's social club listing has incorrectly listed the vehicle as purchasable or buyable, despite the fact that we've never been able to buy or own this vehicle in GTA Online. The dinghy was originally planned to appear in Rockstar North's cancelled title, Agent, and this version of the dinghy has 4 seats. But there's another version that only has 2 seats, the Dinghy 2-seater. The main image back in 2019 for this vehicle erroneously had both of them swapped, so the 2-seater had a picture of the 4-seater and the 4-seater had the picture of the 2-seater. Luckily, this has since been fixed on the Rockstar Social Club, but this seems to be an issue that Rockstar makes quite frequently. They also released a separate version of the dinghy for the heists, which actually has a slightly narrower overhead bar at the rear of the boat. If you compare it side by side with the other one, it is slightly narrower, which does make it a different model. And finally, they added a 4th version of the dinghy that spawns with the yacht, and this is also a separate model because it doesn't have any black side skirts around the outer perimeter of the boat. This is the only change I could find, and other than that, all the dinghies perform and handle the exact same. The dock handler in the original versions of the game on Xbox 360 and PlayStation 3 had a minor error where the character would turn the steering wheel in the wrong direction compared to the wheels. This was fixed in the enhanced version of the game, but can still be seen on those old consoles. On top of that, the dock handler shares its entrance animations with the dump, meaning that the player will not use the handler's ladder and simply jump up to the door. The The Dock Tug is one of my favorite vehicles in the game, and I still wish we could own a Dock Tug custom. But when you honk the horn of the Dock Tug, there's actually a small delay before your character presses the horn. Sometimes your character will also remove their hand from the horn, despite the fact that you're still actually honking. The Dodo has some broken spawn points, and although I couldn't get them to work for me, apparently some of the Vinewood Hills spawn points spawn the plane upside down, rendering it impossible to be piloted. On top of that, the maroon livery appears to have its registration code partially offset. This is most apparent when you look on the left side of the plane, as the N on the registration number is actually partially cut off. Surprisingly, the Dominator's Rockstar Social Club page is actually missing Arena War from its list of dealers where you can purchase the vehicle. As for the Apocalypse Dominator, the heavy armor upgrades adds an enlarged rear bumper that covers both the rear license plate and reverse lights. However, the plate option is still available to customize, and the reverse light coronas are still visible within the bumper, allowing the light to shine through regardless. On the Future Shock Dominator, if you have the side-mounted exhausts, the exhaust and flames will actually fire slightly farther back than normal, making it appear that only one exhaust works, similar to the Chino Custom. As for the Nightmare Dominator, if you want different colors on the stock wheels, you don't necessarily have to go through the Social Club to change them. These tires will be stock yellow, but if you move into the tire customization option, select a different tire and go back to the stock options, they will appear red instead of yellow.
For your information, that's green.
Oh. Which one's red?
What the fuck?
For the Dominator ASP, when you apply the GT hood, it comes with hood pins, but hood catches are a separate category in its customization, meaning that you can have overlapping hood pins that intersect each other. When the Dominator FX first released, it had various headlight issues. Specifically on the graded bumper customization, it was noticeable that the high beams would shine straight upwards. The Dominator FX Interceptor has many lights on its front end, including headlights, spotlights, and fog lights. However, you can shoot out the headlights as per normal, but the left fog light and both spotlights cannot be shot out, unless you shoot the bottom right fog light, which will cause all those lights to break regardless of their condition. Sometimes, however, the driver's side spotlight will have its cornea shining despite the fact that all the lights are turned off and broken. As for the Dominator GT, if you apply any of the aftermarket bumpers, the license plate light will actually disappear. The Dominator GTT is owned by Johnny Guns. This vehicle can only be seen in the Don't Fuck With Dre mission, and it's inaccessible to the player. The Dominator GTX's tachometer is programmed to work backwards. If you look closely, it's slightly misaligned, as it will start at the highest rev limiter and move through the empty space towards zero. On the Dorado, it's impossible to have stock side steps with custom arch covers. This is because when you customize the arch covers to any other variant, it actually removes the side steps. So if you want to have different arch covers, just know that your side steps will have to be a different color or a completely clean version. The Dorado Cruiser was seen in its DLC's update trailer, and it had the same set of wheels as the civilian Dorado. This same set of wheels is also seen on the Rockstar Social Club, despite the fact that this vehicle does not come with the civilian counterpart of its wheels, and instead comes with a police issue variant. The Double T has a unique modification that replaces its windscreen with carbon, but if you shoot the carbon, it will still break like normal glass would, meaning that it's just a texture change and doesn't actually replace the glass. Strangely, the Dozer can perform a burnout. This is odd since any tracked vehicle only has one driven pair of wheels, which are the same wheels that have the brakes attached to them, so a tracked vehicle shouldn't be able to do a burnout. This is a little difficult to do, but it is possible within the game. Now, if you lower the scoop of the Dozer over a dead body, it may glitch out as a result of trying to lower the scoop, which will set the vehicle on fire. Furthermore, this vehicle is a very detailed model for the original 2013 vehicles. But despite the details on the Dozer's scoop, the hydraulic levers don't move according to the position of the scoop, they simply remain static. The DR1's livery Declassify has the registration code N-LS5513, which is taken directly from the Valkyrie's livery. So if you're a big fan of either one of these vehicles, you should probably buy the other one to complete the set. On top of that, it also has a cinematic camera for the cabin view, but you might not see it for a very long time because the camera angle will rapidly change in this vehicle, and I'm not sure why this kept happening. The Draugr originally had an issue with its roof panel where it was unable to illuminate when the high beams got turned on, and instead it worked like a daytime running light, meaning that this vehicle didn't have proper high beams available, but this was fixed in the Drug Wars update. The drift tampa features a tow hook that actually cuts directly through the car's right turn signal on its front bumper, making it completely null and void. The Drift Walton L35 has some errors with 2 of its spoilers and its tailgate clipping with them. Normally when spoilers like these are applied, the tailgate or trunk of a vehicle is disabled so it won't open, but in this case these 2 spoilers do clip and the animation was not disabled. The Drift Yosemite has the Patriot livery, which is similar to the livery used on the regular Yosemite, with the exception of it having a different number, 57 instead of 53, which is not noticed by many players. The Dubsta has a similar issue to the second generation Cavalcade, with its steering column being offset, but upon closer inspection it's actually just the steering wheel that's offset, which is another odd bug that's only visible on this version of the car, and not the Dubsta 2. The Dubsta 2, however, does lack a hitbox on its spare tire, meaning that you can travel through it, back it into things, and it won't collide with anything, while this isn't an issue on the regular Dubsta. It's odd that these models are so different. The Dubsta 6x6 had some artwork used in a GTA Plus advertisement that shows a green Dubsta with a Yeti Mall camo livery. However, the Dubsta 6x6 does not currently support liveries at all. When the Duke of Death was first released, it didn't have a description on Warstock Cash and Carry. This was patched with the Heist update, but prior to that it just had an empty space rather than having the current description it has. The Dukes can be found in traffic, but it will always spawn with an SA exempt license plate and no other variants. These are usually reserved for emergency vehicles, but it's caused by the lack of plate entries in its files, causing the game to resort to the police or government plate. The Dump, alongside the Dock Handler, are the first vehicles in the HD universe of all GTA games to feature suicide doors, where the doors open backwards. On top of that, if you look closely at the exhaust by clipping through the vehicle, you'll notice that it's not actually connected to the engine. The exhaust simply starts from the middle of the whole vehicle and lacks any sort of L-shaped connector towards the engine. Now, if you purchase this vehicle in GTA Online, it cannot be stored in a garage and can only be summoned via Pegasus. But some of the Pegasus vehicle spawn points, such as the parking lot at the Backlog City, have exits that are too small for the Dump to navigate, meaning that the spawn point just doesn't really work. The Dune is listed as a valid personal vehicle, even though it can't be obtained through normal means. However, it can be legitimately purchased via other players in the LS car meet, but it can't be modified without the use of glitches. However, because of its immense size, it doesn't fit in certain garages and isn't even shown in the post-race result. So if you win a race in this vehicle, your character will just be standing there without a vehicle. The Dune Buggy has a unique soundbite where you can hear the flap of the canvas shaking in the wind. However, this audio can also be heard within a garage that doesn't have any wind.
No sense of community and no building more than 30 years old. Where fluffy children's themes.
The Dune FAV's passenger-mounted gun allows NPCs to shoot in any direction, ignoring its physical restriction. Despite this, the gun will still be physically restricted from facing the direction, but the bullets or grenades will fire in whatever direction the enemy or NPC is aiming in. The Dune Loader is one of the only standard-size pickup trucks in the game that allow you to stand in the box of the vehicle without falling over, making it easy to transport more people despite the fact it only holds 2 people regularly. The Duster's pesticide sprayers are actually attached to the wings in a really weird way. Majority of the sprayers themselves are attached to the right wing, even the ones on the left. So if you bust off the right wing, you'll notice that parts of the sprayers on the left wing will disappear. And if you break off the left wing, you'll notice parts of the sprayers will continue to float next to the plane. The Duster 300H has its regular aviation alert lights, the green and red ones on either wing, but the red one is tinted red even when it's off, but the green one is tinted white, so it must be a green bulb in there. I'm not sure why one of these was tinted and one wasn't, but that's just how they did it. The Dynasty or Dynasty has a livery called Horn OK Please, which is a reference to the driving culture in India. Truck, bus, and taxi drivers in India will paint the phrase Horn OK Please on the rear of their vehicle to let other drivers know behind them that they can honk their horn if they wish to pass. This is something I wasn't aware of before doing the research for this video, but it's interesting to know. With C and D vehicles coming to a close, I need to tell you that you are not getting the most from my channel. For only $2 a month, you can get your name at the end of every video, early access to new videos, and access to the Buck archives, with over 100 old and forgotten gems of videos. Anyway, back to this video. The LG Retro Custom was originally missing its right door handle, which was completely removed from the vehicle. This didn't affect the door's ability to be opened and was fixed with the Cunning Stunts Special Vehicle Circuit update. The LG RH8 has some rear bumper options that will remove the reverse light, but even if the reverse light's been removed with a new bumper modification, the light will still shine when backing up. The LE has its gas cap on the rear left side of the car, which is another reference to the Eleanor Mustang, since on stock Mustangs the gas cap is located at the rear of the vehicle between the taillights. When the Emrys gets severely damaged, which takes a fair amount of time if we're being honest, smoke will only come out of the left vent and not the right vent. The same can be said when the vehicle gets damaged enough for flames to come out. This is a subtle detail, but if you look closely you can see that there's no smoke coming from the right vent. The Emperor originally leaned back when traveling at high speeds or accelerating rapidly. This has since been changed and has only been seen on a select number of vehicles throughout the game, despite the fact that it's a bit more realistic at higher speeds for an older vehicle as itself. The Beater Emperor was also made by Albany, but the steering wheel has D-Class badging on it, which is odd and clearly a mistake on Rockstar's part. The snowy version of the Emperor has the option to add a phone holder as Extra 1. This feature is not available on the rusted variant, which is what the snowy variant is based off of. The Endurex race bike likely comes from the company Durex, which makes condoms. Another hint towards Rockstar's adult humor and crude jokes throughout the game. Additionally, there's many other markings around the bike and on its wheels that reference this crude humor. The Enduro was originally meant for a different game, because leftovers of it in Rockstar North's Agent were found in the handling files of Max Payne 3, under the Jimmy Vehicles section, revealing that the vehicle was originally meant for Agent. The Entity MT has the option to remove its glass roof, making it a convertible. Now the glass on this roof is always breakable, but when you remove the roof, it doesn't actually remove it, it just makes it invisible, meaning that if you shoot the top of this car, it'll both protect you from stray bullets, and the glass will still shatter if you manage to hit it. The Entity XF has been in the game since day one, but in the earliest trailers for GTA 5, this had a windshield wiper that was perfectly centered on the window. But this was once again changed before the final game, making it a single wiper for the entire windshield in a more conventional place. The Entity XXR is a mid-engine supercar, but upon opening its frunk, you'll see that there's actually no storage for anything, and there's no reason that this should even have to open, since you couldn't put anything there, even if you wanted to. The Envisage has a weird glitch with its tinted windows. If you shoot one of its tinted windows, the broken glass will continue to be tinted, but if you break the door off of the vehicle and then shoot the glass will then become clear and no longer have a tint even on the undamaged parts. The Esky originally wasn't available for races unless you owned a personal variant of it. It wouldn't have a stock version you could choose in the race menu. On top of that, with the exception of the stubby exhaust modification, all custom exhausts seem to slightly clip with the rear passenger's footrest. The ETR1 was originally supposed to be called the Shiva. This was figured out by looking at the internal names in the coding for the vehicle, but in the end its name was changed to ETR1 for its final release. The Eudora's custom exhaust modifications lack any shaking animation, which can be seen closely when you look at its stock variant. The Euros has multiple transparent hood options, but when these are applied to the vehicle, they will become invisible when the player looks through the windshield, making the engine completely visible from the inside of the car. The Euros X32 is described as a V6 sports car, but it actually has a 6-cylinder twin cam which matches that of the Sultan RS Classic, giving them the same engine. This definitely isn't the only car in the game to have a mismatched description to its engine, but it's interesting to note. The Everon's front indicators are tintable when tinting the windows. These will get locked to the highest tint, but can still be tinted regardless. The Everon RS has two different texture issues. The first is where the intercooler clips through the vehicle's lower grille. Secondly, there's a contrasting textured pattern on the rear bumper area, which is hard to see unless you're in good lighting with a light color on the bumper. The Exemplar is a pretty well-rounded vehicle, but the pedals are actually flat, uncut PNG pictures, and aren't even attached to the floor of the vehicle. This can be seen on a couple other 2013 vehicles, but it's most apparent on this one. The F-160 Raiju is actually nearly immune to firearms, except some weapons such as the heavy revolver. Unfortunately, this high bullet resistance was fixed with the Chop Shop update, though destroying the plane with the player inside will not count as a kill by the attacker and will instead count as if the plane was destroyed naturally, but it will still take longer than just using a rocket or railgun. The F620 has a small visual glitch on its dash, and if you look really closely near one of the knobs, there's actually a see-through hole where it cuts through so you can see the inside of the engine bay. A little odd, and it still hasn't been fixed either. The faction has a rear license plate holder that reads Liberty City Willard. And on top of that, dispatchers might mistakenly refer to the faction as a declass muscle car, despite it being made by Willard. The faction custom originally had an unused LSPD livery and an unused police light bar modification. These were most likely reused when they released the faction Outreach. Despite the faction custom donk's hydraulics not working like many of the other lowriders in the game, it can occasionally spawn the LS car meet being used by an NPC, where the hydraulic system will be functioning in the same way as any other lowrider car. As for the Fagaloa, incorrect logos can be seen, and despite it being primarily a Volcar car, Princip logos can be seen on certain racing-themed liveries. This might just be a sponsor, but it's unique to see. Every version of the Faggio is pronounced Faggio and not Faggio, like many people think it is, because this word is Italian. As for the regular Faggio, it can be selected in a race as a utility vehicle despite being a motorcycle. This is most likely due to Rockstar's shitty class system. The Faggio mod was removed from the in-game websites and is no longer available for purchase. But if you're looking to get this bike, sometimes a customer will bring it to your bike mod shop within your MC clubhouse. As for the Faggio Sport, it has a couple minor quality control issues. Firstly, the main body shell has a chunk of plastic missing when looking down from the rider's position. On top of that, there's some incorrect texture mapping that appears on the main headlight and rear indicator casing, and a mirrored version of the license plate appears on the back side of the rear plate, which it isn't supposed to do. The FCR 1000's rear disc brake seems to be slightly off-centered, but the FCR 1000 Custom fixes this, though any fairing option will function as a spoiler, similar to some previous bikes we've mentioned. When using the Felon at night, if you turn on the headlights, the interior dash light that informs you of the headlights being on actually clips through the number 2 on the speedometer. This could simply be fixed by moving the location of the light slightly to the right, but it's still an issue today. The Felon GT was heavily referenced in the first-person trailer for the enhanced version of the game for Xbox One and PS4. In this trailer you can see that the interior dash of the vehicle was improved from its 2013 version, but it was changed again once it actually released, so there's slight differences between all three of them. The Filzer's front bumper is slightly misshapen on one side. This was fixed shortly after release, but was very visible when the game first came out. The Festival Bus has no manufacturer in-game, but is manufactured by Vapid according to numerous Rockstar Newswire posts. This contradicts the manufacturer of the Prison Bus, which is the base model of the Festival Bus, which, in The Lost and the Damned, was manufactured by Brute. However, the Prison Bus doesn't have a confirmed manufacturer in GTA 5. The FH1 Hunter has some instructional stickers on the side referencing an ejection seat. However, the Hunter, like its real-life counterpart, would be impossible to be equipped with ejection seats. This is because in order to be ejected out safely, the main rotor would obviously have to be destroyed. But if you destroy the main rotor without destroying the rear rotor, the helicopter will lose complete control. And with the rear rotor being fully encased, there's not really a good way to eject them outwards, adding even more danger to the process. Moving on to the FIB Buffalo. For this car, the front emergency lights attached to the grille are activated in conjunction with the engine, similar to daytime running lights, meaning that in darker areas or at night, this vehicle's front siren lights will always be illuminated, though they won't flash like they would if the lights were turned on. As for the FIB SUV, like the Sheriff SUV, when they do spawn, they don't typically chase the player as frequently as the LSPD. Instead, they'll try and ram the player off the road more frequently than other police vehicles. The Fieldmaster originally had extra lights above its windshield in the beta of the game to make it look more like its real-life counterpart, as well as some sort of beacon light and unique tread pattern on the tires. It also had the exhaust stack on the front quarter cabin instead of on the rear. But an interesting fact about the gameplay of this vehicle is that it can actually spawn on the beach in story mode towing a rake trailer, which can only be seen being towed by this vehicle. If you manage to drive behind it, leaving enough tracks in the sand, sometimes the driver of the Fieldmaster will actually get angry, jump outside, and start fighting you. Now there's also the snowy version of the Fieldmaster, and many people think that the snowy versions are identical to their clean counterparts. But the Field Snowy Master does have one difference, and that's the fact that its driver's side door has an interior handle, where on the regular Fieldmaster it was missing, and I believe this is because the handle is actually connected to the snow attachments within the coating of the game. The fire truck, as we all know, can have firefighters hanging on the back of the vehicle. However, if you break off that rear step or bumper section, you'll actually notice that when people get onto the back of the fire truck, they will completely float in place, only holding on with their arms, which would take a lot of arm and core strength. On top of that, on the sides of the vehicle, there's a memorial ribbon which could be a reference to the HD Universe's equivalent of the 9/11 attacks. The Firebolt ASP's parts hauler livery is a clear reference to Fast and Furious. However, if you look closely at the livery itself, the word manifold is incorrectly spelt as manifoiled. The Fixster is the rarest bicycle in the game, only spawning once in a rampage mission called Hipsters, where it has a small chance to spawn. On top of that, although the bike's Rockstar Games website listing states it as available in GTA Online, it can't be purchased or found anywhere in online whatsoever. The Flash GT is a wonderful off-roader, but if you manage to get it dirty enough, you'll notice that the Flash GT's spoiler will have incorrectly mapped dirt buildup, causing different incorrect textures to apply to the dirt on the spoiler. The regular flatbed's logo resembles the old-style logo used on Prevost buses. And, strangely, the engine model for the flatbed appears to use 8 spark plugs, suggesting that it's a petrol engine, which is untypical for a vehicle of this kind. But it's not impossible, just not really seen very often. The FMJ was one of the first cars to feature taillights with exhausts right next to them. However, when you do brake with this car, or reverse, you can see that there was originally supposed to be a taillight where that exhaust is, since the light is still within the exhaust. This is an oversight that we'll see again on another vehicle later in the video. The FMJ Mark V has a major issue with its carbon sunstrip, and also some of its livery mapping issues with its stripe liveries. The forklift is the vehicle in the game that I wish we could own the most. Mostly because it's just unique and different, but also you can pick up virtually anything if you use the right technique. Now sure, there's plenty of props around the map that you can pick up with no problem, but larger vehicles or items that are too heavy for the forklift can be picked up if you start raising the forks and then jump out of the forklift before they make contact with the thing you're trying to pick up. For example, here is 4 different forklifts picking up the Chernobog. The FQ2 was originally supposed to be called the Lemniscate, which is another name for the shape of an infinity symbol. This vehicle also had incorrect door textures in the original version of the game, where it only showed radio textures across the entire interior. In the description for the FR36, it says, and I quote, "Can you take 4,360 pounds of sports car around a mountaintop hairpin bend as smoothly as a 30-year-old shut-in caresses his life-size Princess Robot bubblegum body pillow?" But it's interesting that in the game files, this car actually weighs roughly 1,000 pounds lighter, only coming in at 3,340 pounds. The Frankenstein has a couple unique features, but there was a unique door closing animation for this vehicle when it first released, where the player used both hands to shut the door when entering it. This was later changed to the standard animation after patch 1.31. However, closing the door still causes the player's hand to glitch out just a little bit. The free crawler was originally supposed to be called the Reservoir, which was likely a reference to Rezvani Motors, the brand in which the vehicle is based on. The Frogger has some cut designs from its beta version. These can be seen on 2 flight school lessons. The Frogger would have originally had a strike guard, a metal frame on its tail similar to that of the Swift, and skids similar to the one on the Buzzard and its attack variant to land on. Trevor Phillips Enterprises comes back with their own version of the Frogger, and this helicopter actually comes with 2 paint jobs. One is obviously Trevor's graffitied version of it, but underneath that is an FIB logo, and the FIB livery appears unused in GTA 5, but it's implied that the FIB operate the vehicle before it's stolen and vandalized by Trevor, meaning that this livery is unused. The Fugitive's front bumper does not line up perfectly with its front fenders, and can be seen on either side having misaligned sections, causing black lines to be seen. When customizing the Furia, certain wheel types cause the brake pads to clip through the rims. This is most prominent on some off-road wheels as well as some muscle variants. And now that you know about it, you'll probably never not notice it while driving this vehicle. The Ferrari GT has headlight tint available. When you tint the windows, the headlights will also gain that level of tint. But unlike many other vehicles in the game, you can actually apply the different levels of tint. They won't automatically be applied to the highest level. The Fusillade also has a tinting error where the fog lights will get tinted when you apply the highest level of window tint. The Futo is available when creating a job in the Rockstar Creator, but you'll notice that it's actually in the Sedans class instead of the Sports class, which is a bit of an oversight considering it's never even been considered in the Sedans class. The Futo GTX has an issue that we've seen on a few other vehicles before, where the transparent hood options will actually be invisible when looking through the windshield or other windows of the vehicle. The Gang Breeder has a suspension error where if you have the street suspension upgrade or any upgrade further than that, the wheels will begin to clip, mostly apparent on the rear wheels, most notably with off-road tires. The Lost MC Gang burrito is a first generation burrito, although its dashboard is the digital set used on the second generation model, which is interesting to see that they've taken the old burrito and upgraded its interior to match the newer one. The Gargoyle is one of the only bikes purchasable on the Arena War website, but the Arena War website is not listed as one of its potential purchasing sites on the Rockstar Social Club. The Gauntlet has the chance to spawn with a rare pearlescent in single-player mode. Specifically in the Father-Son mission, a metallic yellow and graphite gauntlet can be carried on a flatbed right after Franklin boards Michael's boat. It is possible to steal this car, but be careful, it will sometimes drive away despite not having a driver. The Gauntlet Classics pre-2019 image on the Rockstar Social Club featured a 450 QUI badge seen on the hood and the Gauntlet AC badge. After 2019, the hood badge was removed and the side badge was changed to a modern Gauntlet badge. As for the Gauntlet Classic Custom, if you break the headlights and then break the front bumper off, the headlights will appear to have fixed themselves and won't be breakable any further from the way they were. The Gauntlet Hellfire's hood modifications, more specifically the smooth hood option, will change the air filter on the hood, and this is most noticeable when opening the hood and seeing the difference side by side. The Gauntlet Interceptor originally had an issue with its grill delete option, which, when applied, would cause the emergency lights to float and hover within the grill area. This, however, was fixed, adding a support bar connecting the light to the frame, but originally they did float. The GB200's front wheels have some caster angle when they're turned. If you look closely, when the wheels turn right or left, they actually tilt, giving it a bit of camber. The Glendale occasionally has a glitch in the enhanced version of the game, where when turbo is installed in first person, the engine temperature gauge will function as a boost gauge. I wasn't able to get this to show up, but apparently it has not been fully patched and only shows up occasionally when driving this vehicle. The Glendale Custom was listed on the Rockstar Social Club as a super moddable and buyable vehicle, but it's actually the super modded version of the regular Glendale which should have that modification tag, and on top of that, it's not directly purchasable. The Go-Go Monkey Ballista has the same issue as its regular counterpart, where the dual exit exhaust upgrade will only have one working exhaust port. The GP1 is the only supercar to feature headlight covers that completely remove any headlights from the front of the vehicle, making it not very ideal for nighttime driving. The Granger, according to Southern San Andreas Super Autos, is a pickup truck. Don't ask me where they got that information from, this is clearly an SUV. The Granger 3600 LX has more tinted fog lights on the front bumper and reflectors on the rear that will turn black when adding window tint. On the Greenwood, if the side trim delete option is selected after putting on armor plating, almost all of the vehicle's body trim and its grille will become completely invisible. Oddly enough, the rear trim doesn't change with many of the other options, making the vehicle's entire trim inconsistent with one another. The Greenwood Cruiser has many different liveries, but the names of the liveries don't always line up with the liveries themselves. For example, when the vehicle first came out, the Port Authority livery actually showcased a different, completely separate design. The Gresley was originally supposed to be called the Detonator, and its Bravado badging on the right fender is actually mirrored. On the left side you can see that it says Bravado, but on the right side it's actually backwards. This issue is only present in the enhanced version of the game. The name Growler could easily be another one of Rockstar's sexual jokes, as the word growler is British slang for a woman's unshaven vagina. But it could also be linked to the brand's name, Fister, and Growler being together, which you can kind of put two and two together. The GT500 only has a primary color available in Los Santos Customs. However, there is a trim color option that isn't accessible to us. This affects the stitching on the lower center of the seats, which is set to black in purchase examples and white in naturally generated examples. The GT750, when you tint the windows, it will actually tint the rear blinkers on either side, making the indicators completely black. The Guardian is the only true personal vehicle in the Industrials class, but the steering wheel inside the cab will occasionally not render turning animations when steering the vehicle. So when you go to turn left or right, sometimes your character will just remain static and won't turn the steering wheel. On top of that, the front bumper isn't connected to the body of the vehicle at all. It's not connected to the frame or hood, and it's most noticeable when the player opens or removes the hood itself. Furthermore, the competition and race suspension options are the same height as the sport suspension option, and if the suspension is modified at Los Santos Customs, the vehicle's axles won't align with the wheel hubs and will instead sit above the wheels. The Habanero has a weird line in its code that causes it to be more susceptible to rollovers, which is where it's gotten the nickname in some communities, the Habanero roll. If you increase the severity of this effect, it actually makes the vehicle nearly undrivable, as it'll roll over with even the smallest of turns. The Hakuchu's brake discs originally didn't spin as the wheels were moving, but this was fixed in the enhanced version. The error can still be seen on the original versions of the game. The Hakuchu drag originally featured in The Lost and the Damned, called the Hakuchu Custom, but it was named Hakuchu Drag in the Uptown Riders website in the game. So when they reused this bike, they just took the beta name instead of calling it the Hakuchu Custom. The half-track's description on Warstock Cash and Carry says, the all-terrain capabilities of a tank with all the advantages of a truck, straightforward handling, a spacious, prostitute-friendly cabin, and lots of fresh air for the lunatic on the 50 cal on the back. However, if you find a prostitute while driving this vehicle, you will be unable to pick them up, because Rockstar made this vehicle impossible to do so. This description has since been updated to correct this mistake on the enhanced version of the game. The Hardy's wheels will clip on lower suspension options when going over curbs, bumps, or turning. This is more apparent than some other vehicles that have minor clipping, as it cuts directly through the fender a significant amount. The hauler will occasionally have a glowing front axle. During the night cycle, when an NPC is driving this vehicle, sometimes the front axle texture becomes brighter and white in comparison to the rest of the axles in the game, giving it the appearance of a glow. This is most common in GTA Online. Their hauler custom is more different than the regular hauler than you think it is. Firstly, it's actually longer than the regular hauler, having a larger sleeper, even though it serves no actual purpose. On top of that, that means it has a worse turning radius. Now if you look closely at the front of the hauler custom, it doesn't actually have any front indicators, and the headlights are indestructible due to the cage on the front of the vehicle. An added note on top of this is that when you destroy the vehicle, the texture for the grille underneath the cage will actually completely disappear to black. The Havoc's livery options will actually add different designs to the control stick within the helicopter. When entering the Hellion, the player model will freeze incorrectly with one hand off the steering wheel prior to starting the engine of the vehicle. This is seen in both third and first person for just a brief moment. When driving the Hermes, you may notice that the character sits very low in the vehicle, and if first person was to be more accurate, you would be able to see out the windshield, as you'd be looking directly at the speedometer. However, when driving this car in first person, you do see through the hood, but the more accurate depiction would be when you crouch down. On top of that, this vehicle doesn't have any driving pedals. No gas pedal, no brake pedal, and no clutch. Hexer is the German term for sorcerer, which is probably the origin of this bike's name. The Higgins Heli Tours Maverick was originally meant to be in the game on day one. This can be seen because there's police scanner audio data that remains since 2013, and on top of that, the vehicle isn't even listed on the Rockstar Social Club, so another oversight. The Hot Rod Blazer's description on Southern San Andreas Super Autos refers to the Hot Rod Blazer as only being available to completionists. This is because the vehicle was originally only available to players who completed the storyline, provided options B or C were chosen. The Hot Knife is a very small vehicle, and if two character models are sitting in the Hot Knife together, the driver's right shoulder will clip into the passenger's left shoulder, and they'll be sitting much closer together than normal. On top of that, the Hot Knife's grille, either from its side or its back, becomes invisible. As for the Hot Ring vehicles, the Hot Ring Everon has a hole in its hood that I never noticed, but it's also a fake hole because nothing can pass through or fire through it. As for the Hot Ring Sabre, its stock rims can be seen on the Southern San Andreas Super Autos website in chrome, despite the fact that they only come available in a dark gray tone once you purchase the vehicle. Finally, the Hot Ring Hellfire has roof flaps, which actually count as an active spoiler in the game's files, and once these are applied during braking, it actually gives the car the highest downforce in the entire game, though it is only brief and the vehicle slows down very rapidly. The Howard NX25's name is a reference to Howard Hughes, the main user of the Hughes H1 Racer that this aircraft is based on. Meanwhile, the NX25 is another reference to the plane's original registration number. If the Huntley S's tires are popped, the stock rims look like they're barely textured, with noticeably lower level of detail. This is most likely a minor visual glitch, and it's only seen on a few other vehicles. The Hustler has an issue with its backfiring effects, specifically on either of the exhaust options that feature 4 pipes coming out of the engine bay on either side. Both of these options will only have 4 pipes working instead of 8, only backfiring from the first and third pipe on either side. The Hydra was originally supposed to be a day 1 vehicle within the game, but it was cut for unknown reasons. If you look in the game files, this plane was originally supposed to be called the Vulcan. It can be seen in both the first and second trailer for GTA 5, and in the second trailer it's seen firing 2 missiles at a police maverick shortly before banking to the side. On top of that, the aircraft also appears on an in-game TV where it can be seen hovering in the Cunning Stunts Academy TV advertisement. In this ad, you can see the tail fin has the badge V22, further supporting its original name of Vulcan. The iWagon can be rammed to its right front fender as many times as you'd like, but that fender will never come off. That is, of course, unless you ram the left fender, in which case both fenders will detach, because the right fender is mapped to the left fender and not by itself. On the regular version of the Ignis, any of the stripe liveries with a certain hood option aren't perfectly straight due to the lips on the hood. For any perfectionists out there, this is going to bother you, and you might want to change the livery. The Immorgon's sun strip is actually blended into the glass, as if you shoot the glass, the crack will appear throughout the sun strip as well. Similarly, the covers on the rear panels will actually just cover the glass and not replace them, as you can still see the glass breaking when you fire through them. With the Impaler's molded bumper options, the vehicle's reverse lights will still remain active. Now, although you can't see them and they've been removed, the light on the ground will still be visible. This issue can also be seen on all 3 of the Arena War variants of the Impaler. But on top of that, the Impaler Apocalypse, Future Shock, and Nightmare all have one-way back windows. Specifically, when the heavy armor modification is installed, the rear quarter windows are covered by metal panels, but only if you look from the outside. When viewed in first person or from within the vehicle, it's possible to look out through the rear quarter windows as if the metal panels were not there. The Impaler LX is the only muscle car with removable mirrors. The Impaler LX Cruiser's Custom Emergency Lights Option 1 consists of a dashboard-mounted police beacon, which doesn't emit a lens flare, despite still projecting light. Now, many other vehicles do have this same light available within its dash, but they all have a lens flare, which means it really looks like the light isn't on when looking at it directly, but you can clearly see it reflecting off of surrounding body parts. The Impaler SZ has floating rear doors. If you open all 4 doors in this vehicle, you'll notice that the rear doors aren't connected to the B-pillar. As for the Impaler SZ Cruiser, there's not too many differences from its base variant, but it still has the issue where when you open all the doors, the rear doors are not attached to the body, the B-pillar, or anything, appearing to make them float mid-air, which obviously wouldn't make sense. The Apocalypse Imperator has a bug where you can still use this vehicle with passive mode if you have the rear kinetic mortar option installed, and it makes it one of the few weaponized vehicles in the game that can be used in passive mode. The Future Shock Imperator has both a primary and secondary color roll cage, but when you look closely, these options are completely different and changed much more than just the color, meaning that they should have had 4 options: a primary and secondary roll cage, and a primary and secondary stripped roll cage. On the Nightmare Imperator, the trim color can't be seen on any modifications. Regardless of what modifications you put on this car, nothing will appear as the trim color, nothing on the dash, in the dials, on the interior, or on the exterior of the car. The Inductor is primarily based on the Delphis Top 3.0, which is an electric pedal bike and has become the heaviest bicycle in the entire game, likely due to the batteries. The Infernus might be difficult to buy if you've only ever played story mode or only ever played online, because in online it's available in Legendary Motorsports, but in story mode it's available on Southern San Andreas Super Autos. There was never an answer given to why it fell on either website. The Infernus Classic was seen in Simeon's during the removed business battle, but despite this, it's only appeared in Simeon's dealership once for purchase since he opened in GTA Online. This was on October 5th, 2023. The ingot can be seen in the Pisswasser commercials within the game, but it can be seen with a VD90R body kit, which is not available in Los Santos Customs or any other mod shop, though it would have been nice for Rockstar to add this as a wide body variant. Let's just hope it doesn't come as an LS car meat ingot. The injection was updated in the enhanced version of the game to show a Declass logo on the steering wheel, despite the fact that it's not made by Declass. The Innovation is one of only 2 bikes that feature a metal skull on their frame, but instead of being on the front like the bike you're probably thinking of, it's off on the right side behind your foot. The Insurgent's rear door could originally be opened via the interaction menu selected as trunk, but this was removed in 2015. On top of that, the hood is also impossible to open, so this vehicle doesn't even have an engine model inside of it. The Insurgent pickup is missing an entire exhaust system, as fumes can be seen coming out near the rear wheel, but there's no actual exhaust manifold under the vehicle. When you upgrade this to the Insurgent Pickup Custom, it'll receive an interior option called Light Color, which is normally the color modifying the dash lights. However, it doesn't have any effect on the dials itself or any other component on the vehicle, as the model doesn't actually assign it to a specific area. The Intruder's chrome tip exhausts literally only add a chrome tip on the end of the exhaust. You can see because the tips don't actually line up with the base exhaust and just act as an extension on the original exhausts. The Invade and Persuade RC tank has a unique sound that plays when your jumping ability recharges, and this is the same sound that's used in the arcade minigame when the player reaches a checkpoint. On top of that, if you have the daily challenge Drive the RC Bandito, driving this vehicle will also count towards that challenge. If the player steals Tracy's Issy as Franklin or Trevor, Michael will text the player saying that's my daughter's car. The text is also received if you drive any other stolen Issy near Michael's house. Now this doesn't happen every time, but it does happen, which is odd considering it's not Tracy's car. On top of that, a model called Issy 2 was originally supposed to be in the game, and it's believed that it was likely a hardtop version of the car. The Issy Classic is a target in one of the business battles in online. It's lime green with a secondary black color, and it has a custom number plate C607287R, which is a reference to Mr. Bean's iconic Mini, as well as two number plates it was registered under. For example, C607 is the first half of the number plate and was used in the 1997 movie Bean, while 287R was the second half of the number plate and was used for the majority of the original TV series. The Apocalypse Issy will still allow the player to switch into passive mode if they have the turret installed on the rear end of the vehicle, but you have to make sure that you have no other weapons on the vehicle when you do this. The Future Shock Issy is the only Issy to have rear and side glass, even though it still doesn't have the rear quarter panels. However, if you tint the windows, only the rear window will be tinted, and the driver and passenger windows will not be touched at all. The Future Shock Issy also has a unique exhaust option that actually shoots 3 flames instead of 4. These are completely misaligned when you look closely, but maybe Rockstar just thought we wouldn't look that closely. Finally, the Nightmare Issy has hood glass that's tinted any color you want. The glass or plastic within the hoods where you can see the engine are actually attached to the secondary color of the vehicle, so you can apply any color you want, which will appear as a tint. However, when you open the hood, you'll notice that these holes on almost every one of these hoods is not visible from the inside of the hood, and they appear to be one directional, with no sign of them on the inside. The Issy Rally's race hood option has a small spot near the left vent, which displays odd details when a livery is applied. This small mismatched rectangle is likely a minor modeling oversight, but it doesn't seem to happen with the same hood that has fog lights attached. The Issy Sport comes stock with a massive spoiler, but during the Drug Wars bonuses week, you could obtain a special version of the Issy Sport from the Lucky Wheel, which had no spoiler equipped, making it very unique. Do keep in mind though, if you own this vehicle, do not take it to Los Santos Customs and look at the spoiler options, as just looking at the spoiler options will cause one to automatically become attached to the vehicle. The Itali Classic has a top-down modification for the roof, but when this is taken off, like some other convertibles in the game, the roof is actually just made invisible, so you can't shoot through it, fall through it, or interact with the inside of the cabin from the top, even when the roof is physically removed. The Itali GTB held the longest gap between its last appearance and reappearance in GTA games, being first released in the original GTA in October of 1997, and then reappearing in GTA Online 19 years later on January 10th, 2017. Now, although there's one car that holds an even longer record, this is the longest for any supercar in the game. One of the big differences between the Itali GTB and the Itali GTB Custom is that in the regular variant, when you look behind you, your character will look out the rear window. But in the custom variant, it goes to a third-person point of view and doesn't let you look out the rear window, despite there not being any differences to the rear window or design of the overall vehicle. The Itali GTO's police scanner audio references the car as being manufactured by Princip, when it should be Grotti. The Itali RSX can be seen on the Legendary Motorsport website with chrome and alloy rims instead of the blacked out ones that you receive. Wow, EFGH and I went by so quickly, but what wasn't quick is all the editing work my editor, Kyle.Editor, put into this video. So to thank him and show him support, drop him a follow, and when he hits 2,500 subs, not only will I rank your Mambas, but I will give him $1 for every like, comment, and 1,000 views that this video has. The Jackal's description also has an error, as it quotes that there's more leather and more wood paneling than any other luxury car in its class, though no wood paneling can be found anywhere inside or outside of the vehicle. The JB700 actually didn't have its guns shown within the trailer for GTA 5. The mounted guns attached to the vehicle weren't visible in the trailer, but can't be removed in the final release of the game. Many people think that the guns are the only difference between the JB700 and the JB700W. However, the JB700W does have one extra feature, and if you look closely at the dash, there's extra wood paneling on the passenger side near the glove box. The Jester, weirdly enough, has Pegasi floor mats. You can see the logo, it's very low quality, so you can't make out the words, but it's very clearly the Pegasi logo on the floor mats. The Jester Classic was originally supposed to be added one DLC earlier, but the unreleased original model had many different issues. So they cut the vehicle entirely, fixed it, and released it with the subsequent DLC. The Jester Classic isn't a Sports Classics car, but if you add drift tuning to it, it becomes a Sports Classics car. The Jester race car's livery was remapped and reused on the Ballista Canjo, with slight things being moved to fit the vehicle better. The Jester RR has some unknown textures when applying drift tuning. The steering wheel, trunk bed, interior roof, and door panels will have an unknown texture applied to them. The Jet is another very large plane in the game that we can't own or drive in GTA Online. Now, despite having 4 engines, only 2 of them will actually receive damage and smoke when the plane is going down. This is most apparent if you shoot the outer engine repetitively until the inner engine starts smoking, since the outer engine won't have any damage. This jet is also one of the only planes that spawns in story mode, but doesn't spawn in online. And some people might say that these planes do spawn, they're just not accessible. But if you look closely at the planes that spawn at the airport, they're actually a smaller version of the jet. They have less windows, less seats, less engines, and are just significantly smaller. However, the hitbox of these planes is overly large, which suggests it might use the similar hitbox to the regular jet, which would make some sense. The Jetmax is manufactured by Shih Tzu in GTA 5 and in GTA Online, but if you select the Jetmax during a sea race or a boat race, it'll say that it's manufactured by Ocelot. Another interesting note is that in GTA 4, the police chatter refers to it as a grotty boat. So apparently Rockstar can't make up their minds on who actually made the Jetmax. The Journey can sometimes be seen depicted on a sign at Larry's RV sales with a clean body. This was obviously reused in the Journey 2, but it's also seen in portraits inside of the Yellow Jack Inn, which depict a Journey with a slightly different paint job, having wide stripes at the lower and middle side. The Journey 2's issue can also be seen on the Journey 1, but is most apparent on the customized version, as its engine is mysteriously thin. When you damage this vehicle and the engine catches on fire, you'll notice that the fire comes right through at the feet with the dash at the front. And my question is, what's on fire here? The Jubilee can be requested through the agency, but when you request this vehicle, its headlights will be permanently off, meaning you can't turn them on even at night, making it more difficult to drive at night or in dark places. This is not the case if you drive the vehicle out of the agency yourself. The Jugular will always be a very dirty vehicle, since it can't go through the car wash. I'm not sure why, but it just doesn't let you. The Junk Energy Inductor is almost identical to the regular inductor with a livery, but this spike can be given to the player upon completion of a time trial, but it will be automatically removed once you complete it. The Kalahari comes in 3 different variants: a topless variant, a framed variant, and a variant with rear windows. These windows can be tinted, but regardless of what variant you have, the windshield can actually be tinted along the top half like a sunstrip. When driving the Camacho, you'll notice that the tubular door modifications, when broken off, will revert to the stock doors. On top of that, the reverse lights will remain in place even if the rear bumper is detached. The Canjo SJ was originally unavailable in LS Car Meet Series races, which is odd considering it was in the Tuners class, and only Tuners vehicles could be used for those races. This was since fixed, but it's still unavailable in any drag races, which is odd once again. The Kitora is the newest vehicle in the Utilities class, but for races it's actually in the Sports class, and ever since its release, it has not been made available in the race creator. So if you want to make a race with this vehicle, you'll have to use the Drift version. Speaking of the Drift version, the dials inside the Drift variant don't line up with anything. They're just placed all willy-nilly and don't line up with the dash. And finally, the grille is actually partially see-through. If you look closely at it through the front, you can actually see the character's legs through it and anything that might be behind the door. The Chameleon was originally fully electric on the Xbox 360 and PS3 versions, but it became a hybrid electric in the enhanced version, sporting a 2-liter turbo engine under the hood. The Komoda has 3 different bolt-on lip spoilers, and you'll notice that the right struts between the primary and secondary color ones are slightly offset, But it gets even worse if you go to the carbon bolt-on lip spoiler, where those two right struts will actually be removed entirely, making the vehicle completely unsymmetrical. The Kosatka only has one model in the game files, but if you take it as the approach or getaway vehicle for the Gta.Wiki heist, the version on the heist will have no equipment or light on the sail, closed missile tubes, and no railings around those tubes, with no flags or markings on the actual exterior. But it still has the same color scheme and is drivable like your regular version. So these are all classified as extras, since this model is the exact same in the game files, just with some deleted customization. The Kraken's headlight beams aren't quite aligned with the actual headlights. They appear to be projected slightly to the right of the headlight housing. This is hard to see, but it is slightly off-center. When driving the Krieger and crouching down, you can see that the rev limiter goes way past the dial, and actually clips into the next dial on the dashboard. I'm sure this is present on many other cars, but the fact that it clips into the next dial is a little concerning. The Kurtz 31 patrol boat can be picked up by a cargo bob or iron mule, but if you repeatedly pick it up and drop it, and pick it up and drop it over and over again, the boat will start to float farther and farther away from the hook, until eventually the glitch will cause the boat to violently spasm and damage the aircraft in the process. The Kuruma's hood can be opened to reveal its engine, but if you flip the vehicle upside down, the entire engine bay will be a hollow section under the car. Due to the armored Kuruma's window design, you can't use throwable weapons from within the vehicle, but if you break off the doors, you still can't use throwable weapons, which doesn't make any sense. The La Cruz has a pulsing light bar on its front grille, and after purchasing this vehicle, it will automatically be set in black or white, which makes it look non-functional. The player is unable to change this color, despite the fact that it's attached to the dial color or accent color, which is disabled on its customization list. So, technically Rockstar could give us the option to change the color of this light. The Landstalker originally had TV screens added in its back seats, specifically when you equipped it with side steps. This feature was however removed in the enhanced version. The Landstalker XL's badging on the left and right side are actually uneven, or perhaps it's the liveries that are uneven. Now, although this appears on every single livery, you'll notice that the door handles don't quite line up with the lines, and neither does the badging. So I'm not sure exactly what's offset here, but something's not right. The lawnmower is one of the rarer vehicles in GTA Online, and we still can't own it. But it does spawn in one mission. In the Fooligan Job crop dusting, if the saddler with herbicide is located at the Procopio truck stop, an inaccessible lawnmower will be parked at the weed farm northwest of the Cherry Pie farm. Now you can't drive this or use it, but it is one of the few places that it actually spawns in online. On top of that, despite the fact that the cutters on the underside of the lawnmower can't be activated, when you drive it over grass, you can actually see grass clippings flying up from behind the vehicle. The Electro, at the time of its release, was the only vehicle to feature a Kurz boost. The LF-22 Starling has some liveries that have registration codes on either side of the rear of the plane, but if you apply the Falcon 1 livery, the registration VF-10A is used, but on the right side, the A is cut and seen behind the right wing. The Liberator will always be referred to by the in-game police as a white monster truck, despite the fact that its body is mostly blue. This is just because that the base color under the livery is always white. The Lifeguard is obviously built on the body of a Granger, but it's the only Granger in the entire game that doesn't allow players to hang on the side, meaning that it only seats 4 people rather than 6 like every other one of its variants. The LM87 is the only supercar to feature mudguard or mud flap options. A few other cars have mud flaps, but this is the only supercar to have customization options for them. The Locust's website description is a clear reference to the Locust's first appearance in Grand Theft Auto London 1969. The Longfin has an error with its dials. Specifically, both the speedometer and tachometer dials are backwards as the needles move in the opposite direction. Luckily, this was fixed with the Los Santos Tuners update, but what you might not know is that originally the Longfin was controlled from the right side, as there's details in its beta and coding formats that show the steering system on the right side of the vehicle, which would have made it GTA 5's first right-hand drive vehicle. The Lost Slam Van is one of the rarest vehicles in GTA Online, and it also has a runaway engine. By braking and accelerating at the same time in a fully upgraded Lost Slam Van, it would travel at speeds faster than 140 miles an hour. This has since been fixed and capped at a specific speed, but it still drives while holding the gas and brake. The Los Santos Car Meet Cheetah Classic is not listed as purchasable on Legendary Motorsport on Rockstar Games' Social Club listing, which is odd considering it is purchasable on Legendary Motorsport. As for the LSCM Jester RR, unlike its base model, it doesn't have a center brake light, which results in the taillight's illumination to remain unchanged during braking. The Loiva, despite having a trim color region and seats options called colored seats, there's no option to change the trim color. Upon looking into this, the trim color appears to be attached to the interior design and the roll cage padding. However, the dial color appears to be connected to the rims of the stock wheels. After the Lurcher was released on the final day of the Halloween surprise in 2015, the vehicle's price was increased to $666,666. This is reference to the number 666, a number associated with Satan. On top of that, when the vehicle is stored within a garage and has a wheelie bar installed, it may clip into the wall. The Luxor, when it was brought to the enhanced version of the game, has a strange triangle-shaped texture found on the interior. This is seen in the front row of the seats, and the texture shape bears slight resemblance to the Speedophile logo. This was not seen on the original version of the game or in the expanded and enhanced version. As for the Luxor Deluxe, despite its description, it is not made of solid gold. Gold is a very heavy metal, and would be completely unrealistic to build a plane out of solid gold. It's more than likely coated in a gold paint job, or has gold lining on the exterior. This is further hinted at on a loading screen in the game that states it's exclusively finished with golden paint. The Lynx's steering wheel appears to raise and lower when turning the wheel. This is because the steering wheel is actually offset from the driving column and where the player's hands sit. The Mallard has some unique liveries, but in the content creator, the red and white livery is labeled Aerobats, which is different from when you're customizing the plane. The Mamba actually has unique logos. These unique logos are often represented as their own brand instead of the usual manufacturer's logo, which is similar to its real-life model. I debated not including this car in this video because of how much I dislike it, but I thought that'd be unfair. Occasionally, the Mammotus will have its taxi lights remain on, even if the aircraft itself is destroyed, blown up, or just falls apart. This doesn't happen every time, but occasionally you'll notice those lights will still be blinking. The Manana has a topless version. However, when modifying the car to remove the roof, it removes the windows. With that being said, certain gang and non-gang modified topless Mananas can rarely have side windows still visible, making them a more unique find within the game. Unlike the Manana Custom is in the Muscles class. Both the stock and dual shotgun exhausts partially clip into the vehicle's suspension rack underneath. This is most visible when raising the back end of the car, using its hydraulics. The Manchez is clearly a dirt bike, but it cannot be chosen for races under the off-roads class, and can only be raced under the motorcycles class. The Manchez Scout's brake discs are not attached to the wheels, so when you jump or hit bumps with this vehicle, the brake disc will stay in place, while the rest of the suspension system and wheel will move separately. And the third version of the Manchez Scout C, has a custom front fork option with a slight offset compared to the fork tubes. On top of that, when you customize this vehicle, the Manchez Scout C located on the player's Brocade 6x6 will not reflect any of the visual mods that you've applied. The Mariachi Tornado can be used in GTA Online races, but it's considered an off-road vehicle, so if you're doing a race with Sports Classics, it won't be available. You'll have to do an off-road vehicle and pick this. The Marquis sits the lowest in the water due to its keel on the underside of the boat. Luckily, this keel is not solid and clips through the ground or rocks when beached. This is probably on purpose so that you can navigate through shallow waters without bottoming out before you can get anywhere near shore. The Marshal's hood is actually openable. Despite this fact, you'll notice that it's not hinged on anything and will actually float once it's opened. The Massacro has the option to add extra fuel ports, but there's not actually an extra fuel cell in the trunk or back seat, and these go absolutely nowhere. When applying the same modification to the Massacro race car, the same issue appears, but the livery is also mapped incorrectly on the hood scoop and roof scoop, where it'll actually cause duplicates or stretched marks on the livery. The regular Maverick is mentioned in a Rockstar Newswire article saying that it was made by Western Company. It's unclear whether this was intentional or not, but it's actually supposed to be made by Buckingham. The Menacer has many windows and reflectors around the entire vehicle, and every single one of these lights, reflectors, and windows are breakable except for the two rear indicators, which can't be broken at all. The Mesa comes with a topless variant. Now, although you can't purchase this variant, it was originally meant to be purchasable, as in the Warstock Cash and Carry website files, there was a purchasable version for the topless variant. The Mesa Snow surprisingly also has a topless variant, although it will never actually spawn with it, but it does exist. The Merryweather Mesa can be modified at Los Santos Customs both in story mode and online. However, the bodywork cannot be modified. There was also a brief period of time where you couldn't sell this vehicle and would have been stuck with it, but this has since been fixed. The Michelin GT's carbon hood is affected by the vehicle's secondary color, making it the only vehicle to have colorized carbon available. Now, I'm not sure what you're going to do with this information, but it does lead to some pretty unique looking colors. The Miljet features a unique stall warning alarm during the flight school lesson that you use this plane for. Now, I tried getting this flight school missions to spawn, and for some reason, they just don't exist in my game anymore. The Minimus's front left indicator is affected by window tint. Now, we've seen headlights and other random indicators being affected by this modification, but it's odd that it only takes place on the left indicator beneath the headlight, and not the right indicator or either of the headlights. The minivan's front windows will only appear if their roof bars are present, because they are connected to the roof extra number 3 and is considered a convertible, which is odd. On top of that, the right-hand side mirror is considered part of the front wing component, while the left side mirror is considered part of the body shell. This means that only the passenger side mirror will be broken off in a collision. The minivan custom's door speakers don't quite line up on either side when selecting different options. This is most notable on the Pullman's door speakers and the basic door speakers, which include a neon trim on the passenger side door, but not on the driver's side. The number of speakers is also incorrect on either side. The Mixer actually has 2 models in the game, and they're both manufactured by HVY or Heavy, despite the fact that it shares a cab with the 3-axle Tipper, which is manufactured by Brute. But we'll get to that soon. The second version of the Mixer is the 4-axle Mixer, which has wheels at the upper back that don't have any collision. When you have the police in this vehicle, you'll sometimes notice that the police scanner audio files refer to the vehicle's manufacturer as Skiver, indicating the company name on the side of the vehicle rather than the manufacturer of the vehicle itself. For the MOC, despite having no visible alternative side or front entrance on the outside, the player can exit the MOC via a door at the front bay of the trailer, which obviously doesn't make any sense. On top of that, if a player buys the MOC with the personal vehicle storage installed, and then stores a personal vehicle inside, and then switches the upgrades and purchases the weapon and vehicle workshop to replace the personal vehicle storage, the vehicle inside the personal vehicle storage garage will still be accessible, only that you'll have to call it and won't be able to actually view it within the MOC. The Mogul has some strange steering mechanics. When steering the plane on the ground, the main gear wheels will turn instead of the tail wheel, as seen in other tail draggers in the game, and occasionally in real life. The Monroe has a spare tire in its front trunk area. However, this tire is completely different from its stock tires, and it's a space saver tire with a wire rim. The Monstrosity's custom spare wheel modifications actually have no collision, so when you back this vehicle into something, if you have custom spare tire options, they'll clip right through. On top of that, when you break off the rear door, the entire spare wheel will become invisible, causing a floating logo. Similarly, when you break off any custom hood, it will also turn invisible. This is best seen with the Foglight variant. The Moonbeam was originally supposed to be called the Aster, which can be found in its beta files. This is a much closer reference to its real-life variant, the Chevrolet Astro. The Moonbeam Custom has tintable indicators on its front bumper. Now, I'm not entirely sure if these are actually indicators, as they appear to be clear and see-through, but I'm not sure why there'd be glass down here. Regardless, they can be tinted with the windows. There are surprisingly 5 different variations of the mule, and the regular mule, when it spawns being driven by an NPC, if you stand on top of the cab and then jump to the cargo hold, it will occasionally cause this vehicle to do a wheelie that the NPC can't control. This can be very buggy and glitchy, but it leads to some funny moments. They released a separate version of the mule for the Contract DLC that, despite having its own unique text label within the game, it doesn't have a unique name and is still just called the Mule in the game files. The Mule Custom is the most customizable version of this vehicle that we have, but when you add the heaviest armor onto the vehicle, you'll notice that the handles for the rear hanging passengers on the driver's side of the vehicle are still functional. But on the passenger side, the armor sticks out too far and causes the handle to be ungrabbable, making it completely useless. Despite this, a character can still hang off that side of the vehicle and ride there as if there's no problems. The Heist also introduced its own version of the mule, and despite this version being almost identical to the original version, the Rockstar Social Club states that it has 6 seats instead of 2, which is a mistake because it can only seat 2 players. Finally, the ramp mule does exist in the game files for GTA 5, but doesn't appear anywhere within the story. The vehicle can be spawned with a trainer and is fully functional, including the ramp that opens and closes. It'd be awesome if Rockstar made this vehicle purchasable for us, because I know a lot of people who would probably use it to haul their motorcycles for the MC businesses. The only time that you'll ever see this vehicle is when delivering motorbikes for certain businesses, when this vehicle will spawn as the drop-off point. However, these ramp door mules are not accessible to the player. Now before we move on to the end vehicles, remember to check me out on TikTok, Twitch, Instagram, and any other social media. If the Buckacherz name exists, it most likely belongs to me. And any extra support is greatly appreciated. The Nebula Turbo appears to steer slightly to the left, even when not touching the steering wheel. This is caused by the extremely high toe angle on the front wheels. This isn't the only vehicle to have this feature, but it is interesting to note that it's the only sports classic. The Nemesis is primarily inspired by the Ducati Monster, which is likely where it's got its name, since both names suggest typical adversaries or competitors. The Neo's red abstraction and gold abstraction liveries are based on the Spiker C8 Aileron LM85, which uses the Spiker racing livery. The neon is referenced in an advertisement on Blonded Los Santos 97.8 FM on the radio, but you'll have to listen for a while to actually hear it. So here's the clip instead.
What are you, thunder or lightning? Why make noise when you can be a silent assassin? Fister announces the fully electric Fister Neon. Less and more. Nothing says efficiency, discipline, and power like a trunk full of laptop batteries. The Fister Neon. Electric finally got manly and dangerous.
When modifying the exhaust on the regular variant of the Nero, the carbon panelings appear to be more concave on the passenger side, slightly detaching from the vents and moving over. This is most visible when rapidly switching between the options. The left side will stay the same, while the right side deviates slightly. As for the Nero Custom, when you pair certain spoiler options with other specific liveries, you'll notice that the sides of the spoiler itself will have a reversed image for the livery, which is an oversight on Rockstar's part. The Nightblade has a slightly different name in the traditional Chinese release, where it was called Nightshade, which means it shares the same name as the vehicle and car, the Nightshade. On top of that, when the Bikers update first launched, there was a small promotional event for this bike where the player could unlock a Western Motorcycle Company hoodie upon purchasing this bike. For the nightclub blimp, it should be noted that every nightclub named blimp is exclusive to the player's nightclub of the same name. If you change the name of your nightclub, the blimp will also change to match it. Therefore, it's impossible to acquire all of the liveries at once. On top of that, during the nightclub management mission, Play Music, the blimp may spawn with an exclusive DJ livery. Unfortunately, these are also unobtainable, and the livery depicted on the blimp depends on the player's current resident DJ. The Nightshade's name is a reference to a genus of plant with the same name. These plants are most known for their unpredictable effects on the human body. Being one of the most poisonous plants in the world, the license plates in the import-export variants, Deadly and Eat Me, reference this directly. The Night Shark's guns were originally retractable and had a unique animation where their machine guns would hide within the front bumper, but at one point this broke and it's never been fixed. The Nimbus has a slight offset with the hatch of its nose landing gear, resulting in small gaps in the hatch itself being past the center when closed. I'm not sure how this made it into the game, because once you see it, you'll never be able to unsee it. This is just such an eyesore from underneath. The Niobe's rear wheels are slightly more tucked in than the front wheels, and this is even more exaggerated once you add the wheel well flares onto the vehicle. For the Novak, if any wheel type other than the stock wheels are selected, the brake calipers will actually be behind the brake discs, which would make them unusable. The Omnis's fog lights don't move when damaging the bumper. If the bumper is hanging off or falls off entirely, these lights will hover in place. The Omnis EGT's front number plate is floating ahead of the actual bumper, meaning that it's completely disconnected from the car. On top of that, when the suspension is upgraded and slick proximity mines are installed and online, sometimes the proximity mine will actually stick to the rear bumper of the car. The Oppressor's beta name was Street Hawk. This is according to duplicate vehicle mod files, which would make it a reference to the TV series Street Hawk. The Oppressor Mark II's hitbox is lowered when deploying or retracting the wings, so if these wings are currently traveling in or outwards, you'll have a higher chance of colliding with something just underneath you. However, this can be useful for grabbing collectibles in tricky-to-reach places. As for the Oracle, when the game first came out, there was actually a Benefactor logo on the steering wheel. This was likely a result of reused asset interiors, and was later removed, leaving the steering wheel completely blank. I couldn't find any pictures of this originally. For the Oracle XS, if you apply any level of window tint to the vehicle, it will also cause the front side indicators to become tinted as well. Regardless of the level of window tint you put on, the indicators will always be tinted to the highest level. The Osiris was one of the first cars in the game to have gull-wing doors. However, the animation for opening these doors matches that of any regular door. Here you can see the regular animation for the Bullet, the same animation being used for the gull-wing doors in the Osiris, as well as the standard animation for gull-wing doors on the Sterling GT. The Outlaw was originally supposed to have suspension upgrades to lower the vehicle like you normally would, but this was cut and you can't change the ride height of this vehicle. The Outreach faction is classified as a lowrider and automatically comes equipped with the first hydraulics option in the trunk. However, this overrides the original police equipment that was supposed to be in the trunk. This can still be seen and obtained via glitches. The P45 Nakota comes stock with 6 guns. Despite this, only 4 of them actually work. The inner guns and the outer guns, with the middle ones not actually firing anything. This is likely because the outer guns match that of the Annihilator and Night Shark, which is reused, and the middle ones are just there for cosmetics. The P996 Laser's nose gear wheel seems to slightly clip through the fuselage when the landing gears are up. This is very minor and I'm not sure that many people have noticed it, but if you paint this plane it could stand out more. The Packer is another 2-seater semi-truck that we actually can't have a custom version of for the MOC. Despite the fact that it only has a 2-person capacity with a driver and a passenger in normal gameplay, in the mission in Pac-Man it actually seats 3 people, with Franklin, Trevor, and Lamar.
Hey, it's, cozy in here.
Scooch up, home. Yeah. Scooch over here.
Scooching in that crazy dude? Oh, hell no, that nigga stink.
Get over here.
Of course, in this situation, Lamar isn't actually sitting on a seat and is just in the sitting position. If you spawn a regular Packer during that mission, he'll actually glitch to the rear of the vehicle. I'm not sure why this happens, but they could have just made it a 3-seater. The Panther has no engine access. If you open the trunk and the hood at the same time, they're both storage compartments. The engine is actually hidden underneath the rear trunk, becoming completely inaccessible for any maintenance. For the Panto, if you install the roll cage and chassis upgrade modification, it can cause the stock exhaust to stop emitting fumes. This also occasionally happens with other shorter exhausts, but any of the more unique ones will continue to function normally. The Paragon R originally lacked a trim color, meaning that whatever trim color you got on the inside of the vehicle when you purchased it is what you were stuck with. This was fixed with the Diamond Casino Heist update. The Paragon R Armored is usable in passive mode, despite the fact that it can be weaponized, but the user will remain in passive mode. The Paragon S's titanium tip bore exhaust originally didn't appear on the passenger side of the car, although the smoke and backfire effects would still work as intended. This exhaust was added again with the Agents of Sabotage update. The Pariah's front bumper doesn't deform or detach from the vehicle, so no matter how damaged this vehicle might get from running into things, the front bumper will remain where it is and hover in place, while the rest of the engine bay crumples in. The Park Ranger was originally classed as an SUV, however after patch 1.12 it had been recategorized correctly as an emergency vehicle, though prior to this it could be used in races and was even possible to apply a paint job instead of the Park Ranger livery. This feature is now available for those who purchase the vehicle and online, as you can paint the vehicle but not remove the livery. Now the Patriot has a lot of problems and I could probably make a video about it alone. When this vehicle is driven by the NPC, it can occasionally spawn with a small radio antenna above the windscreen, but if the player enters the Patriot, the antenna will disappear. You can also find this vehicle spawning around the map with extra mods including side steps, bull bars, and round roof lights, although none of these modifications are available for us to put on the vehicle in Los Santos Customs. And as soon as you drive this vehicle into any mod shop, these options will disappear, giving you a stock Patriot to work with. On top of that, the customizable rear bumpers you can put on this car are actually off-centered to the right, and it's not by a little bit. The Patriot Mil-Spec's front-mounted machine guns are attached to the front of the hood, so strangely when you open the hood and the guns point downwards, you can still fire straight off. The same can be said when you break the hood off entirely. The guns aren't even on the vehicle, but you can still fire away. The Patriot Stretch has less issues, but when you apply tint windows, the yellow marker lights on the stock front bumper will also get tinted black. The PCJ 600 does not have an oil tank modification, but if you remove either the front mudguard or the plate holder through the mod shop, it will cause a square-shaped oil tank to appear within the engine bay, changing that as well. On top of that, if you shoot and pop the rear tire of this bike, you'll notice that the rim isn't properly modeled and has a completely bare open section. And finally, the badges on the rear read PCJ675, which is inconsistent with the bike's name, PCJ600. The penetrator was originally supposed to have a carbon roof scoop that covered the entire length of the roof. This could be seen in promo footage for the Import-Export DLC, but this must have been cut from the vehicle before the DLC released because there are no roof scoop options available for this car. The Penumbra's right headlight's innermost light appears to be slightly offset from the physical light itself, as the corona of the light will appear off to the center of the car more, making it look a little funky when you look too closely. The Penumbra FF has a Princess Robot Bubblegum livery, and it's the first one in the entire game that characters Princess Robot Bubblegum and Shiny Wasabi Kitty are featured at the same time on the same livery. The Peyote originally had modifications that included a pair of fuzzy dice on the mirror. However, these dice were removed in the enhanced version and have not been reintroduced since. As for the Peyote Custom, it lacks a feature that the early lowriders all had. If the no roof option is applied, the player will not rest their arm out the side of the window while cruising at low speeds or remaining stationary. The Peyote Gasser has the ability to lower its suspension, and if you lower it enough, the rear wheels will clip through the fenders when driving over bumps or uneven surfaces. The Phantom's grille is actually invisible from the inside. If you manage to open the hood and look at it from the inside side of the hood, the grille will disappear and be completely see-through. For the Phantom Christmas, which is actually the same Phantom model just with a Christmas livery and Christmas lights on it, the Christmas lights will actually move with the hood despite hanging off the hood incorrectly. I'm not sure what these lights are made of, but they're very stiff and don't adjust at all. The Phantom Custom, which is one of my favorite vehicles in the game, actually has some issues with reused assets from the regular Phantom. If you look closely, the headlight textures are completely different between the Phantom Custom and the regular Phantom, but despite this, the Phantom Custom's headlight textures will open with the rest of the hood, despite being part of the fenders, which don't open with the hood, which leads to some pretty interesting lighting bugs when you open the hood at night. The Phantom Wedge is equipped with the CB radio, much like the standard variant. However, since only Trevor can hear the CB radio broadcast when traveling in Blaine County, the Phantom Wedge's CB radio cannot be heard via normal means unless you spawn it in forcibly in story mode. On top of that, similar to the Cerberus, the ramp on the front is considered a weapon itself, meaning that the use of passive mode is not allowed while driving the Phantom Wedge. The Phoenix was seen in the first trailer for GTA 5, but the car is customized with Spooner Muscle custom wheels, a custom chin spoiler, and side skirts, and the rare, not customizable, no spoiler option. Some of the Picador's splitters leave small gaps between the vehicle and the splitter itself, which make them appear to float in place. Additionally, the vehicle originally had Vapid logo floor mats. The Picoli has a unique feature where the only way to change its license plate was by using the iFruit app, but that was discontinued in December of 2023. So, you can no longer change its plate, and it's likely due to the fact that both its front and rear plates are stretched to more resemble European plates. The Pipistrello was the only supercar to be released in the entirety of 2024. The Pissfosser Dominator has cut-off badging on the rear end of the vehicle. If you look closely at the Vapid badge, it's actually cut with two triangular shapes on either side. The Pizza Boy originally comes with these default rims, but when the bike is purchased, it will be supplied with a set of Solidus wheels instead of the stock ones. The police bike has two different models. The first is the original 2013 model, which, surprisingly, when you have 1 star, the police on the bike will still shoot you, compared to those in the cars that will just try and stop you and ram you off the road. The second version of the police bike is the Money Fronts DLC police bike that we're able to own in online, and despite the fact that we can own it in online, it's not listed as purchasable from Warstock or ownable on the Rockstar Games Social Club. The Police Cruiser Interceptor features unused customization options, including several hood, front and rear bumper, skirt, and push bar options. However, these options cannot be obtained in story mode, and we still can't own this vehicle in online. The Police Maverick is a slightly different model from the regular Maverick, but it's still programmed to hold 4 people. However, if the police and Noose show up with this helicopter and start rappelling down, you'll notice that mysteriously it has 6 seats. This is because 2 of the police officers will actually phase from the back of the helicopter, meaning that the police have a rare 6-seater variant. On top of that, the Ambulance Maverick is not a separate model and is instead a livery on the Police Maverick. Due to this, sometimes when a Police Maverick is meant to spawn, the Air Ambulance will spawn instead, most notably around the prison. The Police Predator in the original version of the game had a map of the Alamo Sea and Sandy Shores on the screen, which was also seen on the dinghy. However, in the enhanced version of the game, they replaced this with a blank screen, so there's no map on there at all. The Snowy Police Rancher actually has black detailing instead of chrome, unlike its other civilian counterparts. This includes the grille, the handles, the mirror, and the rear handle, which this vehicle does have. The Police Riot's name suggests that it's used in riot situations. However, it only forms roadblocks in the game, and it will not deploy any noose officers from the rear of the truck, and only has a noose driver and one passenger. However, there are two exceptions to this rule. First, in the Polito score, where you'll see two noose vans pull up, and officers will get out from the rear. On top of that, in the Pacific Standard job, if you kill the hostages, the same thing can be seen. The Snowy Police Road Cruiser has a smartphone holder on the dash, which will always spawn on the interior. Now, this doesn't really make too much sense considering you can only find this vehicle in North Yankton during the prologue, and smartphones didn't exist in 2004, at least not to the extent that we have them today, so that phone holder likely wouldn't have existed or worked as well. A bonus fact of this vehicle is that it's internally defined as a sports car in the handling data. Therefore, if you're driving around town, pedestrians will sometimes comment on it positively, even though it's just an old police car. The police transporter has the option to open its hood in online, but the hood will clip with the windshield armor every time it's opened. The pony, although not seen very often, can sometimes spawn with tools in the back. This set of tools isn't seen in any other vans and is its own unique model. Now, although these can sometimes also be seen on the Smoke on the Water pony, if the player owns this pony as a personal vehicle, it can't be modified or upgraded or repaired through most mod shops, with the Facility Workshop being the only exception. The post-loot has a livery called Stance Andreas, which actually has a missing decal on the rear right quarter of the vehicle. On the left side you can see the sponsor clear as day, but on the right side that section is completely blank. Bonus fact, the Dinka badge on the horn is actually slightly cut off on the bottom. The Pounder has an above axle box, meaning that the box is actually elevated above the wheels. But if you look inside the vehicle, there's actually wheel wells to make space for the wheels that would clip through if the box was lowered. This is completely useless and doesn't serve any purpose since you can't actually sit back here like you can with some other box trucks. The Pounder Custom is another customizable version of this vehicle, and surprisingly, the barbed wire on the roof actually gives the vehicle the downforce bonuses that a spoiler would give. I'm not exactly sure how this works, but if you want slightly better handling on this massive truck, you may as well put the barbed wire up there. The Power Surge's headlight only has a corona effect, and the light itself doesn't fully light up, making it look like the light isn't on when viewed from the side. This is also slightly noticeable on the rear light. The PR4 originally had an issue where if you drove it to LS Customs while it was damaged, the vehicle would be automatically repaired for free, but you'd be charged for cleaning if there was certain dirt or aspects on the vehicle that needed cleaning. The Prairie has a small error on its back end, and if you look really closely, you'll see that the Bolacon emblem is partially cut on both sides, which makes it look a little odd. On top of that, some of its exhausts have incorrect exhaust smoke positioning, as exhaust fumes will come out slightly in front of the exhaust pipe, rather than where they should. The Premier's PRM shield badge on the rear portion of the vehicle resembles the side badges of the 5th generation Pontiac GTO, which is an interesting little Easter egg. The Previan is one of the newer vehicles to the Grand Theft Auto franchise, but it was originally supposed to appear in GTA 4. This was later removed, leaving only a horn sound, a police scanner sound, and a GXT entry within the game files. With the Primo, when you apply custom rims, thus exposing the brakes, the brake calipers would originally glow the same way as the vehicle's lights. It's more evident at nighttime, particularly in dark areas, but it appears that this has since been patched, which is unfortunate because it looks pretty interesting in the pictures. On the Primo Custom, some trunk and ice combinations may intersect with one another. Some trunk options will remove the underside of the ice combinations, while others will not, causing them to somewhat overlap. The Prison Bus was originally called the Police Prison Bus on PlayStation 3 and Xbox 360 on the in-game HUD, but after the enhanced version came out, this was fixed and it's simply called the Prison Bus now. However, the original name still remains on the Rockstar Social Club. The Pyro was originally supposed to have some kind of booster upgrade in a similar manner to the LF22 Starling, Tula, Mogul, or the RM10 Bombushka, so it was meant to have JATO. In addition, there is an afterburner option that can be selected in the content creator, but it doesn't have any effect on the plane during testing or actual gameplay. On top of that, the anti-collision lights on the Pyro are incorrect, with the red light being on the right wing and the green light on the left. There is not a single vehicle in the entirety of GTA 5 that starts with the letter Q. The R88 does not have a default radio station. The radio will remain off until the player chooses a radio station on their own. It also has 11 different liveries, but 2 of them are unused or removed from the list and can't be accessed in the game, except for during specific event weeks where Rockstar has made them available. On top of that, the R88 is the only open-wheel vehicle to not have a cinematic camera option at the top of the back of the cabin. This is likely because the precedent was given to Formula 1 cars in 1985, and the R88 is a model from before that time. The Radius's trunk will actually clip when opening with the interaction menu. The rear window will clip slightly through any spoilers you put on the vehicle, and the top of the trunk will clip through slightly on the roof. And being less noticeable, the front doors will also clip with the fenders. The Raiden has some minor clipping problems, with its crew emblem placement being partially clipped through the driver and passenger side doors, and its brake calipers clipping through certain wheel types. The ramp buggy's description states that you'll see a meteor shower in your rearview mirror. However, there's no rearview mirror in the vehicle. The ramp buggy also has a variant that spawns with a spoiler and covered roof, but this can only be seen in the special work mission Escape Escort, the VIP and CEO work Ramped Up, and might appear in the setup mission for Escort ULP when it started with 2 or more players. The rampant rocket has a unique feature when reversing, because the wheels will spin backwards for a split second before the player actually moves backward. The trike doesn't have reverse gear, meaning that the amount of power put into the vehicle's files is too much too soon for the vehicle to handle. The Rancher XL and Snowy Rancher XL are basically carbon copies of each other, but many people don't notice that the Snowy variant has a handle to open the trunk. But this has been removed from the regular version, meaning that it should technically be impossible to open that trunk. The Rapid GT's outline is actually used when looking at any sports cars on the Social Club website, meaning that it has one of the most recognizable outlines of any of the sports cars. The Rapid GT Cabrio's secondary color only affects the seat belts behind the front seats, so regardless of what color you want them to be, when you put the roof down, you'll notice that color only appearing on the seat belts. The Rapid GT Classic has heavy bumper options on its rear bumper. These are US spec bumpers designed to meet US regulations for cars made in the 60s to the 90s. The Rapid GTX's picture on the Social Club actually depicts a blue Minimus, which is not even close to the same car. The Raptor lacks a lowrider wheel category within Los Santos Customs, so any of those wheel options cannot be placed on this car. The Rat Bike also falls victim to the same speed glitch as the Gargoyle and Death Bikes, where if you apply a larger rim on the rear wheel and wheelie, you'll get a significant speed boost. The Rat Loader was originally classed as a utility vehicle. Then, following the 1.07 update, it was classified as an off-road vehicle, and then after the 1.1 update, it was classified as a muscle vehicle, where it's stayed ever since. It also gives us a timeline of when the GTA strategy guide was made and produced, because in the book it's referenced under off-road vehicles. The Rat Truck's tailgate lacks a proper opening-closing animation and will just click into place. On top of that, it opens into the box instead of outwards, causing it to partially clip with the wooden bed of the box. The Ratel is one of the only vehicles in the game to feature movable caps on its exhausts, especially on the sideways variants, where they don't point straight up. The RC Bandito can be equipped with a remote bomb, but the remote bomb's countdown will always skip the numbers 9, 8, 7, and 6 when counting down. As you can see, whenever it hits a multiple of 10, it skips the next 5 numbers. But of course, this countdown doesn't mean anything because it will just reset when it hits 0. When customizing the RCV, the horn options in the customization menu will only play for a brief moment before being cut off early compared to most vehicles. On top of that, when you apply a window tint, the front emergency lights and the glass on the rear-facing camera will become tinted as well. A small fact for the RE7B is that it was originally supposed to be called the LE7B. When the Reaper first came out, many people complained of the broken roof pillar with the black section on the front ends of the car. But it wasn't intended to be this way and was just never fixed. The Clean Rebel has basically no customization options, but it can spawn with 2 different bumper modifications, a roll cage, and some extra lights on the roll cage itself. But I haven't been able to get one to spawn that has a unique front bumper and the covered fog lights on its roll cage. The Revla GTS has a broken glass texture, as if you shoot through both windows, you'll see the fuzzy outline of the far window on the closer window's broken texture. The Redwood Gauntlet was originally purchasable from Southern San Andreas Super Autos in GTA 5, and this is evidence from the unused pictures of the vehicle. This was later implemented in both GTA 5 and GTA Online with the Cunning Stunts update, but it featured a newer picture. The Reaver, believe it or not, is the fastest non-HSW land vehicle and fastest bike in top speed, reaching 163 miles an hour or 262 kilometers an hour. The Regina's headlights have a bug where if you modify them to be xenon headlights, 2 halogen headlamps will stay the same and 2 xenon headlamps will appear instead of 4 total xenon headlamps. Not sure I'm saying that right, but let's move on. When driving the Remus, the camera is positioned farther away than normal. This is to compensate for the larger tall exhausts, even if you don't have them installed. The rental shuttle bus's front windows don't spawn. Regardless of how you find this vehicle, whether on the street or via Pegasus, it will not have a driver or passenger side window. This is due to the fact that the roof is considered a convertible top, and since the roof is forced to spawn every time, the windows will never spawn. There was also a removed livery for this vehicle with the purple and blue touchdown livery, which was removed in the Heist update, but only affected the PlayStation 4 and Xbox One versions of the game, meaning that it can still be seen on the PlayStation 3 and Xbox 360 versions, and the texture file is also still in the base game. The retinues fact is probably going to bother you a little bit, but the front left wheel is actually wider than the front right wheel. It's not very noticeable, but if you look closely, they are different sizes. As for the Retinue Mark II, the back seat is rendered completely useless due to the harness mounts for the front seat's harnesses. This isn't the only vehicle to have this feature, but it's interesting that it's so prevalent on this car. The Revolter's emblems are a bit mixed up. If you look really closely, you can see the Pfister emblem inside the Ubermacht badges. The Rhapsody is listed in the original handling files for GTA 5, but it didn't appear in-game until the I'm Not a Hipster update, and it seemed to originally be an all-wheel drive vehicle with a slightly heavier mass and higher top speed. The Reinhardt's front right door moves at a slightly slower speed compared to the rest of the doors, hood, or trunk. This is easily seen when opening all the doors in the interaction menu in GTA Online, and as you can see, it's at quite a delay. The Rhino tank actually fires RPG projectiles, or at least Rockstar has reused the model from the RPG. Now this can only be seen briefly if you slow the footage down or pause it, but you'll notice it has the same model. On top of that, the firing angle doesn't always line up with the actual tank itself. Now, the Rhino may have gotten its name from a World War II era tank destroyer, the Nashorn, which is the German word for rhinoceros. On top of that, it's stated that it has a 1500 horsepower turbine engine, which is likely a reference to the Honeywell AGT 1500 turbine engine, which also pushes 1500 horsepower, found in the M1 Abrams tanks. The Riata's doors have a slight offset with the hinges, resulting in them separating from the car itself and floating alongside the vehicle. The Ripley is labeled in the game files as having dually wheels, but when you flip it over you'll notice that the back wheels are actually just extremely wide. On top of that, the interior actually has 2 different radios and 2 entirely different dashes, one for the driver and one for the passenger. So I'm not exactly sure who gets radio privileges in the vehicle, or if either side of the car just plays different music. The RM10 Bambushka's social club listing incorrectly says that it has 4 seats, but we know it has more than that. On top of that, if you apply any upgrades other than armor, engine, handling, and respray for the vehicle, it will result in the cargo ramp becoming inaccessible by foot or by vehicle. The RO86 Alkonost is completely disabled during passive mode, even if all the countermeasures and bombs are removed from the plane, making it one of the few unweaponized vehicles in the game that you can't fly in passive mode. On top of that, despite having 4 turbines, only the inner ones will smoke when heavily damaged. The Rocket Voltic is the only supercar that can only be obtained once and cannot be sold. The Recado initially had a glitch where no matter what tint the rear window was, it was only visible from the outside, as if you looked from the inside, the tint would be clear. The Rogue is the Mamba of the sky. I just don't like it. But one small error with this plane is that the weapons on the right wing have no collision detection. So if you drive a vehicle or the plane into an object on the left side, the weapons will collide with it. But on the right side, they'll pass right through. On top of that, it also means that bullets are unable to hit them. The Romero hearse is the only vehicle manufactured by Chariot, though it still retains its Albany badging, suggesting that it might just be a coach builder firm. On top of that, a wrecked Romero can be seen on a car jack in the La Mesa branch of Los Santos Customs. The Roosevelt has exhaust fumes that are located at the lower back left side of the car. However, the entire exhaust system is missing and was never added. This is likely an oversight from the car's initial release. The Roosevelt Valor, however, does have an exhaust system, but upon closer inspection, it lacks any of its driving pedals. The RT3000 is one of the only vehicles in the entire game that allows you to roll down and roll up the windows. Since this vehicle comes stock as a convertible, if you add a hardtop roof, the convertible feature will still work, but only the windows will roll up and down since you have a hardtop roof. On top of that, the Princess Robot Bubblegum livery features Japanese text that actually translates to Dinka Ballista, which is obviously a different car. The Rubble's cab is primarily based on the Phantom cab, with them being almost identical. However, if you look at the engines, it actually shares the engine model with the Scrap Truck, being a front-mounted, turbocharged twin-cam 4-cylinder engine rather than what the Phantom has. Despite this, the engine sound remains the same as all the Phantom models, as you can hear now. The Ruffian's license plates are unavailable if the custom frame modification is installed. Obviously this is because this modification removes the plates, but it will actually remove the option to even customize the plates within the menu. The Ruiner's rear license plate holder reads Ruining Imports since '67. 1967 was the year that GM debuted the F-body. This gives further evidence that the Ruiner is based on the Chevrolet Camaro and Pontiac Firebird, since this is the year that they were both introduced. There's also a wrecked Ruiner available in the game. This was introduced at the same time for particular missions with the Import-Export DLC, and if you're able to spawn this vehicle in story mode or online using menus, it can be driven, although there's no animations for anything on the car. The Ruiner 2000 is one of only a few vehicles in the entire game that has electrocution abilities. If you restrict the access to your personal Ruiner 2000, other players attempting to enter your car will be electrocuted as if they're shot with a stun gun, causing them to fall to the ground. This does not work, however, if the door has been removed from the vehicle, but don't worry, they won't be able to drive it either way. The Ruiner ZZ8 can be damaged severely on its front end, but when damaged too much, the engine belts will float in front of the vehicle, detaching from the rest of the engine, because they don't deform with the rest of the engine and front area of the car. The Rumpo has a small modeling error on the rear right wheel arch, where part of the underside texture is misplaced and bugged, allowing you to see through the vehicle. The Deludamol Rumpo is actually its own model as well, and before the heist update, if a player took this vehicle to Los Santos Customs, its manufacturer would be stated as Grotti, despite Rumpo being made by Bravado. The Rumpo Custom is a prime example of vehicles that can wiggle and curb boost, but more importantly, the spare tire on the back of the van can repel and bounce the vehicle forward when you reverse into the wall. The more speed you have going into that wall, the more aggressive the bounce will be. The Rustin was originally meant to have liveries. According to its files in-game, it was originally meant to have a Ron, Atomic, Zero Gas, and Mindmuck livery, but these were cut for unknown reasons. The Rusty Rebel's bed cap options actually make the vehicle bulletproof from the rear end, so if you have enemies chasing you, consider using this vehicle with these modifications. The Rusty Tornado naturally spawns with worn colors, and they're unique and can't be selected at any mod shops. But if you take one of these rare colors and bring it to Benny's, you can still get the Tornado Custom in these unique colors. On top of that, there's a chance that this vehicle will spawn with a map book of Liberty City just between the front and passenger seats. With roughly 30% of the vehicles left, I wanted to quickly bring up my level 2 memberships, which are a tad pricier, but give you all the perks of Tier 1 with the added ability to request access to any of my research spreadsheets or ranking breakdowns, and have your name stand out on the end card. The S80RR is the only supercar to feature rear wheel covers. Now this is already a fairly rare modification, but the fact that this is the only supercar is pretty unique. The S95 has two different liveries that feature a number placard on the roof of the car. These are definitely offset to the driver's side, as you can compare them to the spoiler and inset on the roof itself. The Sabre Turbo's left reverse light has its corona misplaced in between the physical reverse lights. On the driver's side, this is normal, but on the left side, you can tell that it's a little bit offset, and instead of having two, there's only one in the center to make the difference. As for the Sabre Turbo Custom, if anything other than the stock grille is added under the grille category, the frames of the fog lights from the standard Sabre Turbo will still be visible. This might be an oversight since these options were carried over from the standard model and left unchanged. The Saddler can spawn with many different customization options already installed in the vehicle, but regardless of what's installed, it cannot be used in the car wash, both in GTA 5 and GTA Online. So if you attempt to bring this to the car wash, you'll just get a little notice saying that you can't wash this truck. So if you want to clean it, you're going to have to bring it home and do it yourself. As for the snowy version of the Saddler, the brake calipers actually float behind the rear wheels. Now, many people probably haven't noticed this because you need the vehicle off the ground. Here, when the vehicle's flying through the air, you'll notice that it stands out like a sore thumb. The Sanchez's name, along with the fact that it's a dirt bike, may be a reference to Dirty Sanchez, which is a slang term for a sex act associated with coprophilia. As for the Sanchez livery, in the original versions of the game, the vehicle lacked racing numbers, so the liveries existed, but no numbers were on the vehicles. The Sanctus is not only the second motorcycle to have a full skull on the front, but it's the only vehicle in the entire game to feature colored headlights as a stock option. On top of that, a possible beta or early version of this bike can be seen on the back of the Damon manual within some mod shops. This bike also features a prominent skull on the front, but instead of being based on the Everest, it appears to be based on the Hexer. The Sand King SWB's bed cap has no collision with bullets or throwables, so you can fire right through it, meaning it offers no extra protection on your back. The Sand King XL doesn't have any B-pillar in the vehicle, so if you break off both doors on one side of the vehicle, you'll notice that the entire side is wide open. This also means that when you open both doors, the rear door won't be connected to anything. The three Sasquatches in the game have a couple unique features. First off, on the Apocalypse Sasquatch, and the other variants, the electric fence front bumper will actually electrocute people when you bump into them, making it one of the few vehicles with a feature like this. Upon release, the Future Shock Sasquatch had its side steps and underside incorrectly mapped with the Havoc's texture instead of its own, but this was fixed in the Diamond Casino and Resort update. The Sasquatch Nightmare has a front bumper that features a highway sign. This can also be seen on the other variants, but this highway sign is only seen in one location on the map. The Savage will rarely be delivered by Pegasus with an unbalanced cannon, meaning that the gun on the nose is not properly centered with the motor and spins oblong or off-center when firing. The Sylvester makes a unique engine sound, and upon igniting the engine, it can be heard warming up for a brief moment. This sound is reminiscent to those heard on real-world vehicles using this type of engine. The SC1 was made by Ubermacht, which is the only supercar that company makes, as they specialize in sports cars. However, despite this being a supercar, it isn't even the fastest on Ubermacht's lineup, claiming 4th place if you include HSW. The Scarab has 3 different versions, and the next fact will apply to all 3 of them. Both on the Arena War website and the Rockstar Games Social Club listing, it states that this vehicle can only hold 2 occupants and only has 2 seats, despite the fact that it can actually hold 4. Specifically on the Future Shock Scarab, certain modifications on the engine cover options may cause a visual bug on the side badges. If you have the heavy-duty cooling engine cover applied, the badge on the passenger side will be inverted and backwards. But it gets even worse if you apply the livery roof option, where the badge will be mapped completely incorrectly, showing many different, very small icons instead of one larger one. On the Nightmare Scarab, there are no headlight options unless you have the stock ram weapon or the light ram option, but every other ram weapon on the front of the vehicle will remove any headlights this vehicle might have. Now there's a lot of shafters in the game, and starting with the regular shafter, its taillights are improperly textured, causing part of the inner trunk texture to bleed over and the taillights to slightly stick out. The shafter LWB can only be used in sports races if you have a custom variant, otherwise it won't appear in sports race categories. The shafter V12 can be used in both sports and sedan races, which is odd because it definitely tops the class for sedan races, but isn't really competitive in the sports class. For the Shafter LWB Armored and Shafter V12 Armored, they both feature extra white strips on both front seats. I'm not sure what these strips are meant to be, as they do float within the vehicle, but it's the only unique or broken feature about these vehicles I could find, so as much as I didn't want them to share a fact, unfortunately that's how it has to be. The Schlagen GT's tachometer needle is wrong, where it starts at the max amount and then goes through empty space until reaching the bottom of the dial. The Schwarzer's trunk slightly clips the body of the vehicle when you open it all the way. The Scorcher has a small bug that occasionally occurs when a player performs a bunny hop while stationary. Sometimes the bike may end up floating mid-air. Sometimes it's only for a split frame, and other times for a few seconds. The Scramjet is obviously a reference to Speed Racer, but I want to talk about its rear view mirror placement. The This is typically overlooked by many players, but the rearview mirror is actually located on the dash, which does work for this specific car, but in any other vehicle would be questionable. The scrap truck has a unique issue where, unlike its similar tow truck counterpart, it lacks physical axles, rendering the wheels disconnected from the truck entirely, but if you move far enough away, the axles will appear. Normally this is the other way around, where items are missing from the vehicle on their low detail model from farther away, but in this case it's the other way around. The Sea Sparrow, when purchased in GTA Online, will come with a color set reminiscent of the one from the 3D universe in older GTA games, which is not part of the default traffic colors found on this vehicle. The Sea Breeze is one of the best aquatic planes in the game, and this is because it can actually dive underwater and none of its flaps or other parts will be damaged when exiting the water. This allows it to dive fairly deep and pop back up without any problems, unless you land upside down. On top of that, it also shares the same wheel design as most industrial trucks, such as the Mule, Benson, or Phantom, which is also present on some other aircraft. The Sea Shark could be seen with a black hull and a two-tone paint job in the first GTA 5 trailer and in pre-release screenshots. It also featured a yellow glowing outline around the speedophile decals on the boat's front fairing. However, it features unused secondary color values in the color's variation data and just spawns in one solid color now. So, unfortunately they cut these minor details, which would have made it look a lot cooler. The Sea Shark Lifeguard is a completely separate model of the vehicle, but in reality it only has a livery on it. That's the only difference, and there's nothing else in the game files or physical model that changes anything. I mean, when you do pull up the vehicle in Codewalker in the vehicle viewer, it doesn't have a windscreen, but in the actual game, it does have a windscreen. So, these vehicles are virtually identical. As for the Sea Shark that spawns at the yacht, it's not listed on the Rockstar Games Social Club at all. But if you look closely, it actually has a different front grille option, where instead of having a grille wrap around the front, it's a solid panel. The Seminole is similar to the BJ XL, as it was initially meant to tow trailers, but was never given a tow hitch, so this feature was inevitably cut. The Seminole Frontier has no option to be unarmed in the front two seats. If you cycle through all the weapons when driving this vehicle, you'll notice that you don't have the option to hold your fist out. Now, if you don't have any weapons on your character, the unarmed option will be grayed out and you won't be able to do anything, meaning you can't flip people off from this vehicle. The Sentinel was accidentally reclassed as a sports car in the 1.1 update, instead of its former Coupes category. We never learned why this was changed, but it was reverted in the 1.11 update. The exact same thing can be said for the Sentinel XS. The Sentinel Classic has a very odd gear shifter, where reverse gear is actually where the first gear would be, and all the other ones are subsequently misaligned. This is likely a reference to the dogleg manual gearbox that was used in its real-life counterpart. The Sentinel Classic wide body's upswept exhausts incorrectly emit additional fumes and flames upwards where the exhausts point, and straight out where they obviously don't point. The Sentinel GTS's spoilers will always disappear when detached from the vehicle. So when you break the trunk off, the trunk will still act like the spoiler is there, but it will become invisible. But the Sentinel XS will get a different fact, because in the enhanced version of the game, the roof and second front bumper modification are no longer made of carbon. Instead, they're now treated like the secondary color. But in the original versions of the game, both of these were made of carbon. And if you're an OG player, you'd remember that. The Sentinel XS4 has some bugs with its liveries, specifically the Junk Energy livery, which will cause the primary or secondary color to clip through on different parts of the bumper, which it obviously shouldn't do and it looks very buggy. On top of that, the livery is completely unlevel on either side. If you look at the Junk livery on either side, you'll notice that they are at completely different heights. Moving to the back of the vehicle, the trunk doesn't have any connectors, so when it opens, the trunk will actually float entirely on its own. Finally, the rear taillight cornea is slightly offset and isn't actually within the light itself. When the Serrano was brought to the Enhanced Edition, the front left headlight was missing a surface and texture in the center of the lens. The 770's leftmost exhaust pipe, on its stock exhaust, doesn't appear to have exhaust smoke coming out. The Shimano's headlights are located on its landing gear, but if you look closely, only the left landing gear has correct textures, as the light on the right side is missing its actual light cover texture. Regardless, it doesn't affect how the light works, just how it looks. The Sheriff Cruiser was originally supposed to have blue and yellow plates, and were originally black and white in the beta of GTA 5. This would have been similar to the LSPD Police Cruiser. For the Sheriff SUV, if you find one in online that doesn't have a driver, and you use Lester's Cops Turn Blind Eye, or the CEO Bribe Authorities ability, you can get into that vehicle and drive away, even if there are passengers inside or hanging on the exterior of the vehicle. Do keep in mind though that as soon as this timer runs out, they will become aggressive towards you, bail from the vehicle, and start shooting at you. The Shinobi is primarily based on the Kawasaki Ninja, and Shinobi is the term used for a male ninja, so there's easily some correlation there. The Shotaro doesn't have any stock rims, or any rims whatsoever. Now of course you can't see these rims because of the covers, but if you blow up this bike and knock the covers off, you'll notice that there's no rims. The wheels completely disappear when the bike is destroyed, causing it to clip through the ground and just look a little funky. The Skylift is one of the least seen helicopters in the entire game, but it could originally be kept after the mission sidetracked, but was unable to be stored. The helicopter could also be saved in the original version by storing it at a helipad in story mode, but this was patched. On top of that, it can also be kept and used after the casino work One-Armed Bandits, but can still not be stored. I'm not sure why Rockstar won't just let us buy this, it'd be an easy implementation for them. The Slam Truck is one of the more disappointing vehicles in GTA Online since we can't haul vehicles on it. But there's also some issues with it. Firstly, if you change the rims on the vehicle, the rear wheels will turn from dualies into single wide wheels, but the tread marks from the vehicle will still show as dually wheels, which doesn't make any sense. On top of that, there used to be an issue where the engine hood on the Slam Truck would fall off extremely easily, simply if you walked up to it. And finally, when storing the Slam Truck within the office garage, the animation entering the garage will show many parts of the truck clipping with the elevator itself, and occasionally when you exit the vehicle, your character would fall to the ground, through the map, and spawn you outside of the garage. On top of that, there are certain locations in certain garages, most apparent in the office garage as well, where when you move this vehicle to that location, it will completely glitch out. Sometimes bumping into other cars, moving to a different floor, or leaving the building entirely as you can hear it fall through the map all the way to the ground. The Slam Van has two unused modifications that can still be found in its files. Both of these options are for hood ornaments, but if the player tries to enable these modifications by editing the files or modding it, the game will crash. The Apocalypse Slam Van is based on Stubby Bob, a 1950 Ford F6 appearing in the 44th episode of the TV show Roadkill. The Future Shock Slam Van is the only Arena War Slam Van that features glass windows instead of netting on either side. As for the Nightmare Slam Van, there's not too much to say, except for the fact that one of its bumper options has ads for Princess Robot Bubblegum, which I missed in my Every Anime Livery video. Finally, the Slam Van Custom has its plate light in the wrong place. Even though the rear plate has been moved from the side to the center on this version of the vehicle, the plate light still remains on the passenger side. The SM722 originally had a non-working brake lamp on the carbon lip spoiler, even though it worked on every one of its other lip spoiler options. The Sovereign is mostly based on the original police bike in 2013, but it has some different changes with its lights and minor details on the bike itself, though it retains the LED textures from the police bike's emergency lights. On top of that, some of the fender-mounted lights may appear tinted when you apply window tint to the windshield. The Space Docker has 6 unique horns, which are all based on old science fiction sound effects. The Sparrow is incorrectly scripted to always play Cult FM, which causes unintended behavior in certain situations. If you call this helicopter when driving a car, the radio in the driven car will instantly change to Cult FM as the Sparrow spawns. On top of this, you can sometimes hear the radio playing when you're exiting the Kosatka during the black screen. The prop Sparrow only appears inside the Moonpool workshop of the player-owned Kosatka. It also appears when you're entering or exiting the Kosatka in that cutscene, but as soon as it spawns in the real world, you get the fully operational Sparrow. The Spectre, weirdly enough, has 2 tachometers. Regardless, only one of them actually work. The Spectre Custom has some unique exhaust options that, if you open the doors, will fire directly through the door itself. The Speeder has a unique Speeder badge on the cabin floor just ahead of the driver's seat. This badge is completely distorted and hard to make out, but it is there. On top of that, in the original version of the game, the GPS on this boat appeared to have a map of Liberty City from GTA 4. This is probably due to the fact that the interior was reused from the boats in GTA 4. The speeder that spawns with the yacht is completely identical again, but it does match the color scheme of the yacht. So here's a fact about the name. Speeder is derived from the word speed, which alludes to the general description of the vehicle being a speedboat, but could also be a reference to a type of drug, since both the Speeder and Reefer are boats named after drugs. The Speedo is one of the only vehicles in the game that can max out its speedometer on its analog speedo. This is because the speedometer only goes up to 100 miles an hour, but this vehicle's top speed is 101.25 miles an hour. The Speedo Custom has two different variants. The Nightclub variant's remote turrets have a limited elevation range of about 20 degrees, but the remote 50 cal is able to aim up to 55 degrees if you have the hood view enabled instead of first person, meaning you can aim significantly higher up on a building or towards the sky for aerial enemies. The personal Speedo Custom that can be acquired through the career progress is unlike the standard Speedo Custom because it lacks the weaponized Speedo icon on the map, and will instead just appear as a standard vehicle icon to other players. The Sprunk Buffalo should be called the Sprunk Buffalo S since it's based on the Buffalo S model, which also means it still features vapid floor mats, but also has backfire effects, which the normal Buffalo S does not feature. The Squaddy's stock horn lacks a Doppler effect and will stay at a consistent pitch from all distances. Here you can hear what a regular horn sounds like when someone drives past you at full speed. And here's what the Squaddy sounds like without that effect. The Squallow is listed as a sleek, sexy 4-seater on dock tees, despite the vehicle only having 2 seats, and only being able to carry 2 players. On top of that, if you manage to glitch the Squallow into Los Santos Customs, it'll be mislabeled as a Buckingham vehicle instead of a Shih Tzu. The Stafford is one of the only vehicles in the game that has a hood that opens from the center. This was very common on older vehicles, and it means that you can knock half the hood off when driving this vehicle. The Stallion has a topless variant, but if you drive the topless variant in first person during rainy weather, it will cause the game to act as if the car still has a roof, muffling the sound and cutting off any rain animation from within the vehicle. The Stainier has a visual bug when the car's tires are burst that makes the rims partially invisible, allowing them to be see-through at certain angles when turning the vehicle. The Stainier LE Cruiser has most of its liveries modeled after those of various California police departments. The Richmond livery is modeled on the Bel Air Police Department in Maryland, and despite its name, the LSPD modern livery is based on the livery of the former Los Angeles County Office of Public Safety, which was dissolved in 2010 before the release of GTA 5. For the original Stainier police cruiser, in the beta version, there was a style of an actual LAPD cruiser with the word police being present on the car. With its current in-game livery, the word police is not stated anywhere. On top of that, the Obey and Survive decal on the driver's side is slightly misplaced, where the second quotation is cut off and the second letter E is slightly cut off as well. The last Stainier we have to talk about is the Unmarked Cruiser, which has several issues on its Rockstar Games Social Club listing for GTA Online. The garage storable, moddable, and premium and buy attributes are all incorrectly marked as false. The Stinger has both a roof and topless version. However, on the Rockstar Social Club list, it only lists the roof variant and not the topless variant, suggesting that these are supposed to be the same car with a modification option similar to other vehicles in the game. On the Stinger GT in the enhanced version, when the rear hood is opened or broken off, the Stinger V8 badge remains floating. This is due to the Stinger V8 badging being mapped to the vehicle chassis itself rather than the hood. The Stinger TT has some spoiler options that actually cover the taillights a bit. At first I thought this was a weird clipping bug, but as you can see, there's a slight gap and it's completely meant to be that way, even though they wouldn't really be attached very well considering it's separate from the trunk section. The Sterling GT had a bug shortly after the Criminal Enterprises update. After the update, all the windows of this vehicle became unbreakable, and therefore the vehicle's occupants were unable to get shot by normal bullets, even if the doors were open or knocked off. For the Stockade, despite the fact you can't use weapons due to the glass being bulletproof and armored, if you manage to do the drive-by action while in this vehicle, the glass on the window will actually completely disappear. Here you can see that I've done that with Trevor in story mode, and the driver's side window has disappeared. If you have a passenger, they can do the same thing with their window as well. The newest Stockade, the clean Bobcat Security Stockade, was originally cut from the final release of GTA 5. The truck's model is not present in the game's files, but the Snowy Stockade's livery is named Stockade 2 livery, despite the Snowy version's model being named Stockade 3, suggesting that they cut the Stockade 2 livery and model from the entire game. Speaking of the Snowy Stockade, it actually never spawns with a license plate, despite having an area cut out for it. On top of that, the Brute logo on the grille is actually deformed and just looks really funky the closer you look at it. This is not the case on either of the other two stockades. The Stratum actually has 3 different modifications that spawn in traffic that can't be changed in Los Santos Customs. It can spawn with a roof cover, an open sunlight, or a glass sunlight, with the most common option being the open sunlight. The Streamer 216 has a second identical version of the model that exists in the game files. It's called the 216C Streamer, as opposed to Streamer 216. This model is completely unused, and unlike the model in-game, it doesn't have a low detail model, likely a result of an export issue. The presence of the C within the model name of the unused version suggests that the vehicle's name was changed from Streamer 216C to just Streamer 216. The Street Blazer is one of the only quads in the game that allow you to wheelie. Now, this is only from a standstill or at low speeds, because once you get the speed up high enough, it will not let you wheelie anymore. The Strider is an abomination. To be honest, it should be in the off-roads class or SUVs or anything but sports class. But when you apply window tint, the rear reflectors will also become tinted, so there's a fact about that. The Stretch has an incorrectly mapped bottom texture on the underside of the vehicle. The main design doesn't reach the rear end properly, leaving a section where a rear axle would normally be, but it's duplicated at the end to make space for the actual tires that are located farther back than on a normal vehicle. The Stromberg is the only vehicle in the game to not have a horn honking animation, so when you honk the horn in this car, your character will not reach for the center of the horn. Perhaps the horn button is located somewhere else due to it being a submersible, but we're not entirely sure. The Strider has a small bug that when you get on this tricycle, you won't always put your helmet on the way you're supposed to. On top of that, when stopped, your character's left foot will float and hover above the ground, and won't actually rest anywhere. The submersible has a minor issue when switching characters. If you switch out of the protagonist who's operating the submersible and then wait for some time, and switch back, you may find that the submersible stranded on land as if it's a vehicle they were driving around the map. On top of that, the submersible that you get in the finale for the Merryweather heist is much more durable than normal and is able to go much deeper in the ocean, until eventually it just doesn't let you dive down anymore, but it will not get crushed, compared to a regular submersible which will get crushed at the normal depth. The Segoy is one of the only vehicles in the game to feature analog and digital speedometers, and it's a prime example of why you can't trust the analog speedometers in-game. The Sultan, back on the PlayStation 3 and Xbox 360 versions of the game, wouldn't allow you to use the camera in hood view while the Sultan had its carbon scooped hood modification applied. The Sultan Classic's rear passenger window is indestructible. Regardless of how many times you shoot it or even if you blow up the vehicle, this glass pane will remain in place. The Sultan RS has broken headlight vents. When applying the headlight vent option that replaces the inner headlights with vents, the actual corneas for the light doesn't actually get removed, so these lights will still shine from beneath the vents. The Sultan RS Classic's last exhaust option appears to be named incorrectly and reuses the name from a previous exhaust mod, though I believe this has been fixed in newer versions of the game. The Suntrap's name is likely a play on the word sun deck, since it features an open deck on the bow and the boat positioned to catch the sunlight. If you look further in the audio data, the police scanner will refer to it as the sun deck, which means this was possibly also its beta name. Now, although this boat can spawn without an overhead piece, it can also spawn with a frame piece, a solid piece, and the frame for a tarp to go over the back. Contrary to the Squallow, it's listed as a 2-seater speedboat, but it actually carries 4 occupants, despite having visually enough room for at least 5 or 6 people. But then again, my family has a boat similar to this, and although you could fit 5 or 6 people, it gets very crowded very quickly. The Super Diamond was originally classed as a sports car prior to the 1.01 patch. It was then updated to Sedans class, then switched back to sports in the 1.1 patch, and then changed yet again in the 1.11 patch back to sedans. But it's also seen listed in the sports class in the GTA 5 strategy guide. As you can see, under the sports section, there's the Super Diamond, which has been labeled as a sports car in the official strategy guide for GTA 5. The Super Velido normally spawns with tinted windows. However, if you have a personal Super Velido, it will spawn with regular windows, and this can't be changed. As for the Super Valido Carbon, its error is also seen on the regular variant, but if you enter this vehicle, you will be immediately taken out of passive mode, despite the fact that this helicopter doesn't have any weapons whatsoever. The Serrano has a minor discrepancy between the curved design of its convertible roof and the square corner on its window, where you can see the window initially come down with a slight curve and then jet out to a square point like a normal window would. The Surfer has the ability to open all of its doors, but when you do this, the door keyholes and upper rear compartment handle don't move with the corresponding vehicle doors, meaning that these keyholes will actually float, and so will the handle on the trunk. The Surfer Custom can spawn with either its front windshield down or raised up, but if you own this vehicle and online, it will spawn with both panes of glass, meaning that it has 2 windshields. The Rusty Surfer can actually be seen in red in the gameplay video for Righteous Slaughter 7. The Surge's rear bumper can be seen from the inside of the trunk. This is due to some minor clipping, and many people will never notice this because who drives the Surge, let alone opens its trunk? When the Suzumi first released, its sunstrip modifications were placed inside the vehicle, where the back seat would be, rather than on the windshield. The Swift can sometimes spawn in while being flown by NPCs, and occasionally when they go to land, they won't lower the helicopter's landing gear, which will cause it to lose control upon landing on the ground, tip over, and occasionally explode. As for the Swift Deluxe, it's actually possible to enter one of the back seats by holding the Enter Vehicle button. However, you can't interact with any feature other than switching the radio stations, so you'll need a pilot. The Swingers livery for Queen and Country is based on the Jaguar from the Austin Powers series. I know it's a simple fact, but there's really not too much interesting about this car fact-wise. In case you didn't already know, we have a very active community Discord that I've linked in the description below, so feel free to join and make some friends. When the windows on the T20 are tinted, the F1 style brake light also gets tinted. This is likely a minor oversight on Rockstar's part, because no matter what window tint you have on the regular windows, this will only ever have no tint or limo tint. The Taco Van originally had different windows when you looked at the vehicle from the outside versus the inside, specifically on its roof. From the outside, it's always had 4 glass panes, but from the inside, it used to appear as one fixed window. This was fixed in the enhanced version, but can still be seen on the Xbox 360 and PlayStation 3. The Tahoma Coupe has a sunroof available, and this sunroof is completely bulletproof, acting like a normal roof would. The Tailgater was originally supposed to have a different design for its rear taillights, with the reverse light being surrounded by the rear light and brake lights, but this was changed later in the game. However, the old texture can still be seen here. When switching the dash in the Tailgater S, you'll notice that the alignment of the gauge cluster, particularly around the warning lights, is located in the same place on both of the customized options, but slightly different on the stock option. When taking a closer look at the Taipan, you'll notice that it has 3 pedals, despite the fact that the interior shows a gear selector for a car with automatic or dual clutch transmission, which would make the 3rd pedal completely useless. The Tampa was originally meant to be in the beta of GTA 5, as a police scanner audio file in GTA 5 mentions the car by name. The Tampa GT has a color mapping issue on the vehicle's interior that causes the interior color to be applied to every single part inside the vehicle, including wood paneling, dials, the center console, and even the buttons. The Taxi features a small screen on its dash that displays where you want to go when using a taxi. This, of course, isn't visible in a taxi that you aren't riding in, and as soon as you get out of the taxi, it will disappear from the dash. Another fun fact is that on the driver's side of the taxi, it states that the driver carries a firearm and will use it in self-defense. But regardless, no matter how many times you might piss off or steal the taxi from the taxi driver, they will never attack you with a weapon, and instead typically just run away or use their fists. The Taxi Custom is unfortunately still a Pegasus vehicle and requires an immense amount of grinding in GTA Online to obtain. Of course, since the regular Taxi is also a Pegasus vehicle, it can't be customized or upgraded. But surprisingly, the Taxi Custom is just a regular taxi with matte black and matte red paint, classic rod wheels with custom tires, bulletproof tires, race brakes, race transmission, EMS upgrade 3, 80% armor upgrade, and turbo tuning. So theoretically, if the Taxi were a personal vehicle, you would just be able to make this in about 5 minutes. The Technical's rear turret actually allows you to shoot through the vehicle's doors, hood, and part of its cab directly to the ground. The Technical Aqua has 2 exhaust manifolds, each holding 4 pipes, for a V8. The main exhaust pipe only connects to one of the exhaust manifolds before splitting into a twin exhaust tip exhaust muffler. This is likely a minor development oversight. Unlike the Technical or Rebel variants, the Technical Custom lacks a turbocharger blow-off sound effect if a turbo is installed. Looking at the inside of the Tempesta, you'll notice that there's a small Pegasi badge in the steering wheel. This badge is missing on the Legendary Motorsport photos when you go to purchase the car. The Terminus has been plagued with rear window issues since the day of its release that have been fixed, fixed, and then broken again. But on top of that, the vehicle doesn't have any high beams available. Sure, you'll turn on extra lights when turning on the high beams, but the actual lighting in front of you doesn't change. The Terminus Patrol, which has a couple minor issues. Firstly, if you open the trunk of this vehicle, it will open as per normal with the glass opening upwards. But if you're parked too close to a wall or a tree or a barrier, the rear door will only open part of the way, but the glass will open all the way, clipping with the wheel. However, this can lead to some unique situations, as when you close the doors and then drive away and open them again, only the tailgate will open and not the window. On top of that, if you manage to break the tailgate off, the wheel will revert to not having a cover and just being a stock wheel, and the same happens with the doors, always reverting back to the stock doors. The Terabyte's multi-lock missile battery completely negates all form of lock-on countermeasures, such as Amani-Tac lock-on jammers, chaffs, flares, or from specific mission-only vehicles. Use this knowledge as you will, but many people are already aware that the Tesseract is not affected by ketchup in races, but not as many people have noticed that despite it being an electric car, it actually has a fuel gauge for gasoline or petrol, instead of having a battery charge indicator. When choosing your exhaust for the Thrax, it's important to notice that any of the quad exhausts actually only have 3 flames. Instead of having 4 flames across the back when it backfires, it has 3 flames, which matches the stock variant of this exhaust, with the 3rd flame being centered between the 2 center exhausts. The thrust's exhausts appear to be offset to the left side, causing part of the leftmost pipe to flicker constantly. On top of that, when you install the twin carbon exhaust modification, it creates another set of exhausts on the left side without removing the original set, causing it to clip in quite a few places. An added fact is that during police chases, the dispatch radio may refer to this vehicle as a sports car. Also, the twin carbon exhaust doesn't feature any carbon on it whatsoever. With the Tygon, installing the speed diffuser on the car will also add an additional pair of brake lights. Now, every diffuser has a center light that works as a brake light, but the speed diffuser specifically adds 2 separate brake lights on either side. And finally, the Tipper, which also has 2 different models that are vastly different from each other. The 2-axle Tipper has a low detail model that features an aerial on the passenger side of the hood, but this isn't present on the highest detail model that you'll normally see in the game. On top of that, Brute is missing as the manufacturer on the vehicle's social club page. So again, some manufacturer confusion with these vehicles. The 3-axle Tipper, however, is seen in a scene of the Cunning Stunt Academy advertisement where it appeared with a different grille and cleaner bodywork.
Getting run over. Oh, if you make it through our course.
And one extra fact for the road, when using the 3-axle Tipper, none of the vehicle's windows will break from the inside when shot using a weapon. This is due to the fact that the glass's collision is not double-sided. The Titan can be seen on an advertisement for Warstock Cash and Carry, and it has an olive drab paint, light blue bottom, and white vertical stabilizer. On top of that, if you steal this plane from anywhere on the map and online, and fly over Fort Zancudo, you will always get a 2-star wanted level, even if you own a hangar or if the Titan was stolen from outside the base. The newer Titan 250D is a monster in the skies. But when it first came out, it originally had some issues with its flaps on the rear end, where one explosion would cause the flaps to fall off, and that would make the plane almost uncontrollable. Luckily, this was fixed very shortly after its release. The TM02 Kunjali was originally supposed to be called the Panther. Now, how do we know this? Well, there's some evidence in the file names of the vehicle parts that appear within the facility when the vehicle is destroyed several times. So, if you didn't know, when you destroy a facility vehicle multiple times, certain parts will start to spawn in the vehicle workshop within the facility. These parts, in the game files, refer to the vehicle as Panther parts. If the Toreador switches to submarine mode at the moment of entering the mod shop, it will cause the car and submarine modes to appear on the vehicle at the same time. This takes a lot of practice to get perfect, and even I myself couldn't get it just right. But here's a picture of it for reference. When modifying the Torero, if you add any of the engine cover modifications, it'll render the actual glass pane cover invisible. This can be seen when you open the hood of the vehicle in the interaction menu, and when you walk over the car, you'll climb over the invisible glass panel. The Torero XO is the only supercar in the game that allows you to remove the back bumper to expose a detailed exhaust system. Now there's many different versions of the Tornado, so let's just quickly cover the main ones. The regular Tornado, when applied with proper modifications, can resemble Christine, the demonic possessed car from the Christine horror film. As for the convertible Tornado, if you attempt to add chrome on the roof, it will color it black. Moving to the Tornado Custom, should the player opt to convert the convertible variant of the Tornado, any secondary color will be carried over to the accent color, including colors that are not available for said category, such as chrome, matte, or metals. Lastly, the Tornado Rat Rod lacks a radiator, which would cause the car to overheat, and it's also the only non-muscle car to be able to wheelie. Toro means bull in both Italian and Spanish, which is possibly a reference to Ferruccio Lamborghini, who owned a Riva Aquarama with the 2 inboard Lamborghini V12 engines. The Toro that spawns with the yacht is again very similar to its regular variant, but does have some minor differences. An interesting fact for this one is that the club promoter from the Nightlife leak owns a green yacht Toro, seen and used by the player during the investigation The Marina. It has a green and white paint job with a purple stripe down the middle. The Toros clearly has a trunk door, as there's seams around the rear of the vehicle that would indicate the trunk was openable. However, this is not an option in the interaction menu, and it was never coded into the game. The tour bus in the original version of the game had the flags on its cab doors upside down. This didn't really affect much as per gameplay, but was corrected in the enhanced version. Now, the 3 large tow trucks in the game are all virtually the same. Carbon copies of each other, with one of them having a clean design, one of them having decals, and the other one just being dirty. But some facts that apply to all 3 of them are that the hood clips with the bumper when you open it all the way, as well as the fact that the doors clip with the dash itself, rendering some buttons completely useless. On top of that, both Chop Shop tow trucks are not listed on the Rockstar Games Social Club. As for the smaller tow truck, which we can't own online, unfortunately, if you take it to Los Santos Customs and start skimming through the horn options, you'll notice that it only plays the first split second of each horn. Back in the day, it used to only play the preview for the clown horn. Now, when you have the clown horn installed, if you honk the horn and hold the horn button, it will play the clown horn repeatedly, unlike any other vehicle where it would only play once. But if you happen to have the emergency lights turned on the vehicle, the horn will only honk once as per normal. I'm not sure what exactly causes this, but it's interesting to know. The tractor, otherwise known as the Rusty Tractor, is one of the slowest vehicles in the game, and it's actually faster to walk rather than use this vehicle. However, there's also some issues with its horn. If you honk the horn on this vehicle and hold the horn button, your character will press the horn repeatedly rather than holding it down all the time. On top of that, unlike other cars, the character will only use one hand to steer the vehicle. The Trashmaster has many different flaps or details missing in its different detail level models. The right side center fender flap is not present on the first level detail of model, and both rearmost flaps are missing entirely on the second level of detail. Finally, the side warning stickers are also missing on the second level detail model. The Trashmaster Heist variant is slightly different from the regular Trashmaster, with the Keep Los Santos Awesome sign mounted on the front of the trash compactor with rust textures applied in its level of detail model. But this can't be seen on its highest level detail model. And the most visible change is that the utility access door on the left side of the compactor is not present on the highest level of detail, despite the fact that the hinges, lock, and stickers still remain in place and just float there. The Tricycles race bike has no unique references, no bugs, and no unique features from the other race bikes, so I guess this is the most boring vehicle in the entire game for this video. The trophy truck's spare tires can be changed like the Desert Raids, allowing you to change the color of the spare tires if you change the style of the stock wheels and change their color. I really don't know why Rockstar just never gave us the option to color stock wheels. The Tropics original image on the Social Club featured a canvas roof extra, which was actually removed in the Enhanced Edition. Instead, this vehicle features similar roof modifications like other boats in the game. The exact same issue can be seen with the Tropic that spawns for the yachts, so another fact about the Tropic in general is that it was manufactured by Grotti in GTA 4 and Shih Tzu in GTA 5, so just another vehicle that Rockstar can't seem to figure out who made it. The Tropos Rally has an issue that, honestly, should have been fixed a long time ago, where the fog lights are located behind the vehicle. Despite the fog lights being on the hood of the vehicle, the actual light source and coronas for the lights will be a couple feet behind the vehicle. When you open the hood, it'll actually shine this light directly down on the car like a spotlight. On top of that, in the Rockstar editor, the fog lights won't move with the hood despite actually moving with the hood in the game. The Tug has a very unique horn. This horn is loud and low-pitched, and is even lower pitched when you use it in online. Personally, it's one of my favorite horns in the entire game, aside from the Cerberus, and it's just something I wish we could have in our cars. The Tula's starboard green navigation light originally didn't illuminate the right wingtip accordingly when it flashed, and it would instead only illuminate part of the rightmost engine. This issue was not present on the red light, which was on the port side, which illuminates the wingtip and leftmost engine compartment correctly. Furthermore, the pre-29 main image on the vehicle's Rockstar Social Club listing featured a beta version of the Noose livery, featuring LS Air Force decals and missing the emblem on its left wing. The Tulip has pinned hood options, and when these are applied to the car, the hood will remain closed and cannot be opened, although the option to open the hood might still be visible within the interaction menu depending on the hood you pick. The Tulip M100 is similar, with the hood being disabled after applying the Ram Air Dam or the Supercharger cutout, but for these vehicles the option is removed from the interaction menu, but if you use mods to open the hoods, they can still be opened, which is odd. The Turismo Classic's tail light sticks out slightly, because they're placed in a way that a small part of the brake light is sticking out from its designed slot, making it appear that they were not small enough to fit into the slots. When painting the Turismo Imaggio, you'll probably notice that the interior trim is linked to the primary respray options. However, this doesn't change the entirety of the trim, leaving certain parts as red for default that cannot be adjusted or changed. The Turismo R is the only supercar that was available for free with the Criminal Enterprise Starter Pack. The turreted limo has two different map icons depending on how you request the vehicle. If you call it via Pegasus, it will have one map icon, but if you request it via the CEO interaction menu options, it will have a different map icon. I'm not sure why these aren't the same, and I believe it's the only vehicle to feature this type of error. However, I might be incorrect. When putting the lowest suspension on the Tyrant, there's a graphical error that causes the wheel to clip through the tires when driving over bumps or driving up onto a curb. This clips through more than many other vehicles in the game. The tires comes with painted stock wheels, but when viewed from far away, the vehicle's stock wheels completely disappear. I'm not entirely sure what causes this issue, but Rockstar never fixed it. The Ultralight was originally supposed to be called the Microlight, as this is how it was referenced in the game internally, and it was also referenced in the Doomsday Heist patch notes. On top of that, if you're flying at a high height and jump out of this plane, it will fly by itself for a very long time. It will just continue to glide, and if done correctly, you can't even send the vehicle back to storage. It's just gonna keep flying until it crashes, so it basically renders your personal vehicle useless. The Uranus Law Speed's stock fog lights don't actually function, but if you apply the Gen 2 or removed intake bumper, they will function, despite them being virtually the exact same. Every other bumper option doesn't have functional lights. And now for the 3 utility trucks in the game. The cargo version of the utility truck has an issue with its grille where it won't have any deformation. It looks like this has been slightly fixed, as it does have some deformation, but isn't completely damageable like the rest of the vehicle. The utility truck Cherry Picker has a unique feature that was cut from the game. There were files added in the enhanced version of the game suggesting that the crane and bucket were originally supposed to function exclusively for the Xbox One, PS4, and PC versions of the game, but these files remain in the game unused, though some people have managed to access these files and show what the animation would look like. And finally, the utility pickup truck, which is the smallest of the 3. Now, for those who have played GTA 4, you'll recognize this as the Vapid Contender, but in GTA 5, they changed the Vapid Contender to a Toyota, which will always drive me insane because I love that truck and I can't believe they made it a Ford when it's not even anything like that. Okay, whatever, we're moving on. Now, there's a couple issues with this truck. Firstly, the stone deflector on the front bumper is not visible in first person or when looking through the windshield. On top of that, that entire bull bar system appears to be floating and isn't connected to the vehicle. You have to look really closely at this, but they could have bumped it a little bit farther back to make it at least look connected. And finally, despite not featuring a final exhaust pipe, exhaust fumes can still be seen emitting from certain areas of the vehicle. The V65 Molotov has 2 identical guns with the same properties on the front of the plane. But if you look closely, the right cannon appears to have a larger diameter than the left gun, which in theory means it should have a higher caliber round coming out of it. But instead, these are just identical guns with different cosmetics. The VSTR doesn't actually have high beam options. Well, it didn't when it first came out. This was luckily fixed. The Vaca was originally meant to be sold on Southern San Andreas and Legendary Motorsports, as both websites have designs and pictures taken in their studios for this car to be sold on their respective website in story mode. The Vader doesn't have any unique modifications, but can spawn with 2 different exhausts in the wild. One with a license plate and a side exhaust, and one with an exhaust under the seat that removes the license plate. On top of that, it appears to have 2 different headlights, but only the bottom one will function. The Wagner's license plate was originally meant to be smaller and centered on the back of the car in its beta release, but when it was finally officially released to the game, it was put off to the right side and cannot be changed or altered. The Vagrant might be one of the only vehicles in the game that allow you to completely remove the primary color from every part of the vehicle. The primary color already only affects a small portion of the vehicle, and you can change every single primary body panel to a secondary body panel, meaning that the primary color won't show up at all. The Valkyrie's textures in-game are named Napalm. This is likely because this was the beta name for this vehicle. Now I love the name Valkyrie, but I also love the name Napalm, so I'm not sure which one I'd rather prefer. The Valkyrie also comes in 2 different variants. The second variant is called the Valkyrie Mod 0, which is a term often used in weapons to determine its status as Model 0. The only difference between these helicopters is that the Mod 0 doesn't have the front-mounted machine gun. Vamos's side hot ring exhausts incorrectly emit fumes and backfire at a slightly higher position, making it appear that the smoke and backfire come out of the body panels. Vector was one of the 5 names originally proposed for Toyota's luxury vehicle division alongside Alexis, Calibre, Chaparral, and Verone. The company ultimately chose Alexis but dropped the A and changed the I to a U, thereby creating Lexus. The Velum's dashboard in the enhanced version appears to have a dial mistake, where the airspeed indicates the climb rate and vice versa, so these dials were actually switched up. The same issue can be seen on the Velum 5-seater. But on top of that, these 2 planes do have physical differences on the exterior of the plane. Because of the rear left door, there are only 2 windows on the left exterior of the Velum 5-seater, so it should be pretty easy to tell them apart when looking at them from outside. The Verlier's window tint will also apply to the vehicle's headlights, and will allow you to apply all 4 levels of tint individually to the car. On top of that, the model name is Verlier 2, indicating that there was another variant of the car originally meant to be in the game. The Varus will never be used by El Rubio's cartel to chase you, despite the fact that you can see them doing that in some official artwork from the update. The nose on the Vestra appears to have a misalignment on the right side, evidenced by the primary paint being slightly offset to the rest of the primary paint area. When viewed from a distance, there's no misalignment, but the closer you get, the worse it looks. This is not apparent on the left side of the vehicle, just the right. And finally, the Vitir was originally supposed to be a personal vehicle and not a Pegasus vehicle, meaning that you would have been able to store it in any of your garages or a specific place for that vehicle. This is mostly obvious from the cut exhaust and livery modifications that are available on this vehicle that we can't access anymore. On the Vito Classic, obviously the rear wheels spin and the axle spins, and despite the flywheel spinning, the chain doesn't move with it. The Vito Modern, when damaged enough, will actually cause the frame to push the front wheels off the ground. You could theoretically do the same thing with the rear tires, but typically the engine gives out before you get that much damage. The Vigero stars in a music video for the Gorillaz that was filmed completely in GTA 5. This video has been removed from their channel, but you can still find it in other places of the internet. The Vigero ZX's vanity hood is completely bulletproof, and if you apply the louvers to the rear glass, the texture for the broken glass will clip through the louver, making it appear that the louver is also cracked with the window. On the Vigero ZX convertible, the Lane Racer livery is slightly offset, and even cuts off just before reaching the edge between the hood and the windshield. The files for the Vigilante list that the vehicle is capable of firing exactly 30 missiles, rather than holding 30 missiles, meaning that when you fire all of your missiles from this car, 1 missile will remain in each pod which cannot be fired. This is definitely one of those things that if you never noticed it, you'll never not notice it now. The Vindicator can be seen on Legendary Motorsport, where the image depicts the bike with a secondary colored front fork legs, despite the fact that you can't change the color of these in the game whatsoever. The Virgo's spare tire option is completely disconnected from the rear bumper and is completely floating in place despite the fact it appears secure. The Virgo Classic's headlight and tail lights bleed over from one another. All 4 headlights feature a red strip on their outer edge, and this is due to the lights texturing slightly overlapping between the 2 lights. The Vigero Classic Custom is the only muscle car with customizable wipers. The Virtue's scissor doors lack any collision to players, meaning that you can walk right through them without closing them. Despite this fact, the doors will still collide with any walls that you happen to drive into. When the Viserys was first released, its original top speed unnaturally exceeded some of the fastest cars in the game. This was caused by a suspension glitch which could sometimes occur when upgrading the vehicle. The Vision is the only supercar with a plate delete option, because when you customize its rear splitter, you can actually choose options that cause the plate to be removed. This is the only supercar with the option to have and remove a license plate. The Viv Knight, like quite a few other vehicles in the game, has a startup chime when the engine is activated or turned on. However, this is the only vehicle I've found where a modification or conversion will remove that chime entirely, specifically with its HSW conversion. The No Way Vivinite is just like the regular Vivinite with some added pieces, but there are some slight differences. Obviously, it's in the service class instead of the Vans class, which is an interesting choice by Rockstar. On top of that, similar to the Dune, it's also listed as a valid personal vehicle, even though it's not obtainable through normal means. This vehicle is also not driverless. There's actually an invisible NPC that sits in the vehicle at all times, and sometimes when it glitches or the game bugs, you can see the driver getting out and running away, or appearing in the Rockstar editor. And finally, unlike the hybrid Vivinite, the No Way variant is fully electric while maintaining identical handling. You can hear this when traveling at higher speeds, where the engine would normally kick in on the Vivinite. Nothing happens in the No Way Vivinite. The Volatile is another very large plane we can own in the game, and because of this, it has an increased bomb capacity. But when customizing it in the hangar, it will still indicate that it only gives you 50 bombs. This is not the case, and you do get a lot more. On top of that, despite being based on a British bomber, the dials retain the same Russian markings since they were reused from the Bombushka, which was mostly based on a Russian and Soviet plane. The Volodis is one of the only helicopters with full tint including the windshield. However, this tint is only seen when looking into the helicopter from the outside, because if you look in first person or from the inside, the tint will disappear, making the window appear normal. As for the Voltic, despite it being a fully electric car, when the player exits the car, they may occasionally hear the sound of oil dripping down, which is confusing for an electric car as they don't have an internal combustion engine. On top of that, the oil pressure light is always on the dashboard when the car is running. The Voodoo originally had Vapid logos on its steering wheel, despite being made by Declass. This was fixed in the Ill-Gotten Gains Part 1 update, but can still be seen in some old photos for the vehicle on the websites. The Voodoo Custom comes stock with a hood ornament, however this hood ornament becomes invisible when viewing it through any of the windows or windshield. This will happen on both damaged and undamaged windows, as long as they're not completely destroyed. The Vorschlaghammer's Drift Tune variant lacks the dynamic first-person drift camera that is present on other Drift Tune vehicles, which automatically angles the first-person camera to compensate for the drifting mechanics. However, in the Vorschlaghammer this has to be done manually, making it slightly harder to drift in first person. The Vortex has multiple different front plates that will actually remove the headlights, but one of them appear to want the headlights to bump up with the rest of the plate. But these headlights just get deleted, so you're left with a black open space that look like eyes. Perhaps Rockstar meant to put the headlights up here, but didn't actually move them. It's also possible to remove the license plate by giving the Vortex a custom seat modification. The Walton L35 was never programmed with any deformation, so regardless of how much you damage this vehicle, nothing will ever bend, crumple, or change on the actual body style of the vehicle. The Walton L35 stock's padded roll cage actually clips slightly with the windshield on the left side. When the Warner first came out, police chatter identified the car as an Anis vehicle rather than a Volcar vehicle. From my research, this has been fixed, but the front license plate still appears to be slightly tilted to one side when viewed head-on. The Warner HKR has small empty spots on the rear section of its interior, specifically when having the race interior option chosen. The Washington's headlights were originally tintable via the window tint. This has since been fixed, and it might be one of the only vehicles where an issue like this has been fixed or patched, as most of the time Rockstar just leaves it in the game. The Wastelander is very good in deep water, despite the fact that the exhaust of the vehicle is located on the bottom. Most of the time in the game, when the exhaust goes under the water, the vehicle will die. But the Wastelander is an interesting exception to that, allowing itself to go very deep in the water, making it great for traversing rivers or the swamp near Fort Zancudo. Personally, I'm still unsure where the entire engine would be in this vehicle, but it's gotta be there somewhere, right? And despite having no weaponry attached to the vehicle, the use of passive mode is not allowed while driving the Wastelander. And finally, with the weaponized Kanata, if you shoot these missiles and then try and shoot again before the recharge time is done, you'll actually notice some of the missile models in the sides disappear entirely. From what I can tell, this doesn't diminish how many missiles you have, it's just a visual bug. And finally, the weaponized dinghy has a small error with its turret. If you look really closely when getting on the turret, you'll notice that whoever's manning the turret will have their wrists completely snapped towards them, which would obviously break both wrists. This is just a minor coding issue, and it corrects itself very shortly after. When purchasing the weaponized Ignis, the vehicle comes painted in worn green with Feltzer brown pearlescent as a primary color by default, and neither of these colors can be purchased in any auto shops. So as soon as you customize it, that color is gone until you buy a new one. The weaponized Tampa has its machine gun on the roof of the vehicle, and due to the unique free aiming of the dual miniguns, the hood and trunk option on the vehicle will only open halfway as to prevent any ballistic obstructions for the gun. The Weevil has an error when you enter it in first person that will cause the player's camera to tilt slightly to one side. This will happen every time you get into the car, but will not happen when you exit the vehicle. The Weevil Custom allows you to add a small visor on the hood and an external visor above the windshield. Both of these are available in multiple colors, but will appear invisible when looking from inside the vehicle. This is most apparent on the roof visor, where you can see the color from outside the vehicle, but not through the inside. The Whippet race bike, however, is named after a Whippet, which is a breed of dog that's related to greyhounds, and they are incredibly fast. Plus, if you look closely at the wheels, it'll actually say K9 speed, which is a reference to canine as in dogs, so it further references this. In the original version of the game, this bike's spokes are finished in silver or chrome, while in the enhanced version, only the spokes of the front wheel are finished in black. And finally for this bike, on the Pedal and Metal Cycles website, the bike frame is shown being primarily white with the yellow markings around it, when the bike is actually supposed to be mostly yellow. The Windsor was one of few original cars in the game that came stock with liveries. These could be removed or changed, but when you go to customize the vehicle, it's not under a liveries category. Instead, the liveries options are underneath the respray section, which is odd, and this is the only vehicle to have this issue. The Windsor Drop is one of only a few drop-top convertibles in the game, but it's the only vehicle where the roof is photoed half opened during the animation on the websites where you can purchase it. Every other convertible either has the roof open or closed completely. The Winkies Rockstar Games Social Club listing incorrectly states that this vehicle only has 2 seats instead of 3. It's also the only 3-seater vehicle in the entire game that's not weaponized. The Wolfsbane has a couple different sissy bar modifications, but if you look on the right side, it will actually clip through towards the wheel with a really sharp edge, where on the other side, it's not apparent. The Woodlander is both the lightest SUV in the entire game and the most expensive if you include its HSW conversion, making it the most expensive per pound of any SUV in the game. The new Extreme has an issue with its mirrors, where if you put any of the new mirror options on it, it will actually react to curbs and bumps drastically different than the way it should. As you can see in this clip with the new mirrors on it, it sends the vehicle flying even with a minor bump. But when you go back to the stock mirrors, this is no longer the case. On top of that, the rear hood, once you open it, will actually clip with some of the rear spoiler options. A small glitch on the X80 Proto causes light emitted by the taillights and headlights to be visible through the solid bodywork at certain camera angles. This isn't the only vehicle to feature this problem, but it is most prominent on the X80 Proto. When the XA21 first released, the scissor doors did not function properly in the MOC storage bay. This has since been fixed, but back in the day they would open like normal doors, which looked completely broken and clipped through the edge of the MOC. The Zero Blimp, which Rockstar actually made real-life merch for. Originally a 24-inch long inflatable replica of the Zero blimp could be found on sale at the Rockstar warehouse for $13 US. This makes it the second GTA vehicle to be replicated in a piece of merchandise, the first being the Buckacherz burrito keychain. On top of that, when ordering this blimp in story mode, the woman on the cell phone will say Atomic Blimp. This is likely just to reuse dialogue from the Atomic counterpart in the game. Both the XLS and the Armored XLS have the same issue with their rear brake lights. Now this can be confusing, so I'm going to do my best to explain it. If you shoot the rear reverse light on the right side, it will break another part of the light as well. However, if you shoot either of the brake lights, nothing will break. When you shoot the left light that's attached to the trunk, it will actually break almost all the lights on the right side. This is because the mapping of these lights and their braking animation were actually kind of awkwardly tied together, leading to some interesting mishaps. The Yosemite is mentioned in a radio ad on Blonded Los Santos 97.8 FM. I tried looking for this clip, but I don't have time to listen to the entire radio, so unfortunately, unless my editor can find it,
I have to do everything myself!
Okay, now a quick review from our resident car guy and virgin, Fed, who's going to tell us a little bit more about the Class A Yosemite. Take it away, dude.
Only in America we have the right to put a huge displacement V8 engine inside a vehicle meant to carry pigs and hay bales. In America, we like big cars made of cheap plastic that might look new from the outside, but share 90% of the components with shit we made 20 years ago. Meet the Class A Yosemite, 3 imperial tons of American culture.
Thanks, Fed.
The Yosemite 1500 has two very similar front bumper options that have a large light bar in the bumper itself. However, only one of these bumper options actually has that light bar functioning, which is odd considering how similar they are. The Yosemite Rancher has an issue where if you install a truck bed option, it'll have the same effect to that of lowrider speakers. In addition, opening the tailgate through the interaction menu while the vehicle is stationary and having the radio on will make the radio sound less muffled. The Yuga has the option to replace its rear windows with panels. However, even when you remove these windows, they will still shatter when shot or damaged. The Yuga Classic originally stated that it was a vapid Yuga Classic on Southern San Andreas Super Autos, but when entering Los Santos Customs, it was correctly listed as the Bravado Yuga Classic. This was fixed with the Import-Export DLC. The Yuga Classic 4x4's rear lights will actually shine through its doors if the doors are left open. Not only will they shine directly onto the ground, but you can see the corneas of the lights shining directly through the solid doors. Similar to the Yuga Classic, the Yuga Custom was also listed as a vapid manufacturer on the in-game HUD, but this was fixed around the same time. It's also interesting that there are two identical versions of this van. One of these was specifically released in Agents of Sabotage for the Hunting Pack with Lamar adversary mode. Lastly, the Z-Type didn't really have any issues, bugs, oversights, or unique facts, but many people aren't aware that it was the fastest land vehicle when the game first released, even beating out the Entity and the Adder. When modifying the Xenos, canards, and splitters, you can actually find two options that cause these splitters and canards to clip through each other. The Zentorno has a similar issue to the Thrax because when you put on the quad exit exhaust, only 3 of the exhaust ports actually work. In this case, rather than the flames and smoke being offset, the second exhaust port just doesn't work at all. The Zaba has quite a list of issues. To start, changing the bumper modification will sometimes decrease or remove the turbo on the vehicle. Due to the Zaba's unique entering animation, if an NPC tries to rip you out of the vehicle to fight you, they'll instead get in the vehicle and then just start to drive off. And finally, when floating on a body of water, sometimes you can't get into the driver's seat of the Zaba and you'll just teleport into the rear section of the Zaba, meaning that you're stuck in the middle of the ocean. The Zion is featured on a couple billboards around the game. These billboards feature the front end of the Zion, and the billboard shows it with the newer Ubermark logo, despite the fact that the car always appears with the older logo. Here's a side-by-side comparison for the two, where you can see the blue logo on the billboard and the older red logo on the car itself. When damaged, the Zion Cabrio has a lot of issues with clipping body parts. On top of that, this vehicle allows you to use the convertible roof when the vehicle is damaged, and it causes part of the vehicle to actually float once opening and closing the roof. The more damaged the car is, the more apparent this feature becomes. The Zion Classic has a couple unique features, but everyone already knows that when you apply the waifu livery, it will have a body pillow in the back seat. However, the right side exhaust from the dual stock exhaust options does not match with the original exhaust and lacks the shaking animation. The Zombie Bobber, which has a cruiser seat option that's misspelled as cruisier seat, and the Zombie Chopper, which is also made by Western Motorcycle Company. But if you put the chrome billet primary cover on, you'll notice the Steel Horse logo from a previous GTA game. Here are 2 facts for the Zurusso. First off, when running from the police in this vehicle, the police dispatcher will occasionally call out the vehicle incorrectly, as it's set to overflawed. Secondly, the door on the passenger side doesn't seem to have a functioning light when opened, which is much more apparent at night when you look at both doors being opened. The ZR350 has a bumper modification that removes the fog lights, but even if you remove the fog lights or break off the original bumper, the fog lights will still remain in place and function as per normal, despite not actually being on the car. And finally, the ZR380's Apocalypse variant has a mismatched hood option taken from the JB700. This can also be seen on the Nightmare variant. Unique to the Future Shock variant of the ZR380, the Spirit Wing resembles a large roof-mounted spoiler which can be found on sprint racers. These are typically only used on lightweight, open-wheel racing buggies, despite the ZR380's design not being appropriate for this type of modification. And finally, the ZR380 Nightmare, and also the Apocalypse, both have the saw blade bumper option, and when damaged, this will actually begin to spin off-center and wobble extremely poorly. So there we go, 3.5 hours of vehicle facts in GTA Online, and there's a lot that we missed. So consider subscribing and hitting that bell to be notified when we cover more facts. And check out this video if you like fun challenges, and this playlist if you want even more facts about the game.